I had a hard copy on the last one. Okay, we're going to call our meeting to order without our city clerk here. Hope she's okay with that. And apologize that we're starting late. We were a little too chatty this afternoon and ended up with a granola bar dinner thanks to our CAO. So that's right. Sorry, Dan, did you not get a granola bar? So we'll call our meeting to order and recognize that we're holding our meeting on the traditional territories of the Hoopachesset and Sechot First Nation. Would somebody like to move adoption of our agenda? So moved, Madam Mayor. Second? All in favor? Carried. And we have minutes from the special meeting of council held January 21st, 2019 at 1 p.m. Would somebody like to move adoption?
So moved, Madam Mayor. Second, Madam Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. And item C, 2019 to 2023 five-year financial plan. CAO, if you'd like to, we've got the first item is responses to questions from our meeting held January 21st. And I think we'll get the CAO to give us an overview.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could say first, our goal for this staff's goal, I guess, for this meeting is that council would receive the answers to the questions you had last meeting, that you would have an opportunity to ask questions about the capital plan, because as you can see, we've got some of the city's finest at the table to answer your questions, bringing specific knowledge about each project. And I can tell you we drew straws to see who had to sit at the table. And we've left a couple seats open because there's some projects for which other managers will come forward and answer. And our hope tonight is that we will move as quickly as possible to the options list, for which we'd like to tell you about each project. So we'd like to have the sponsoring manager come up for each project, tell you about that project in 2 to 4 minutes, and then respond to any questions you have. And our goal is that by the end of the night, you will know about each one of those projects and why staff think it warrants being on the options list. And then we would like, and this is an important part, we would like council, individual councillors, to tell us what you want, what else you want on the options list. So what are the other things that are important to you as individuals? And at this point, it's just put them on the list, and then if we get there, we're happy. And then at the next meeting, you'll be able to start to make decisions or narrow down what are the options that you want to, or where you want to take this process. So our goal is to get by the end of the night to you have learned everything about the options list, and you've populated it. And then at subsequent meetings, ideally that list would be closed, and we wouldn't have to put new projects on it. But if something emerges that you have to, we have to. I'd like to tell council as well that we've had success in the last couple of years with what we call a round table format. Like, this is a bit of a square table, but and one of the knocks we had on that was that we felt like our backs were to the audience, and they were excluded from the conversation. So we've tried to make a horseshoe, but it looks like it still looks like a closed circle somewhat. But we tried to open it up and still make room for people. So, Madam Mayor, as you pointed out on the agenda, we are at the responses to questions section. So there were a number of questions from council at the last meeting, and we have 3 written reports on your agenda with responses to those questions. Do you want to walk through each one, or do you want to ask questions to them?
I think it would be good to just briefly go through each one of them.
Okay. So the first one is from Willa Thorpe, Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage. Willa, do you want to speak to those responses?
So, Madam Mayor, the first of the 3 questions that were posed by council at the last budget meeting was first around the Harbour Key leases, and that we've indicated, we've reflected in the budget just a 1% increase. And so the question is around our need to ensure that those leases are bringing in fair market value. So as with my report in front of you there, that we've budgeted conservatively at 1% since we're not sure what the consumer price index increase might look like each year. And furthermore, staff has engaged the merchants in numerous discussions over the previous 12 months in relation to lease rates. We've also met with the Chamber of Commerce to review local lease retail rates as well. And then also there'll be forthcoming reports to council as far as potential lease agreement language in the coming months. Regarding the walk-in cooler replacement at the multiplex, the question is how old is it and why, and is replacement required? So that walk-in cooler is original to what many folks call our brand new multiplex, which is actually 19 years old at this stage. So the walk-in cooler is original, and it has had some recent repairs. Most recently, the compressor was replaced in 2017. And so given the age of the unit and the cost of potential current repairs that we've done, as well as future repairs, our service provider has recommended replacement. As far as other appliances at the multiplex, we're in the process right now of reviewing those as well, if we're expecting any of those other items to come up. But at this stage, the walk-in cooler is the hot button item. And then thirdly on the list there is about the Canal Beach Pier. Is there any interest from service groups? So staff did recently tour the site with a member of the community who indicated some potential material sponsorship may exist, so staff will be following up.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Paulson.
Just the walk-in cooler and the freezer upstairs at the multiplex, they're much, much older than 19 years. Both of those units came from Vancouver with the first owners of the Bulldogs. They came out of an old hotel in Burnaby. And I would say that those units are probably, I would say probably 30 to 40 years old, if not older. So just, they weren't brand new when the building was built.
The city must have done a great job maintaining them to keep them alive that long. Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, moving on to item B, the report from the Deputy Fire Chief dated January 22nd, talking about the radio and pager replacement as well as the ladder truck replacement. Chief Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the pagers question was asked, and they are over 11 years old. And right now, oh, sorry. So the pagers are over 11 years old. And going back through that service life on those pagers that are there, they're actually not able to be repaired anymore. Parts are not available for them, and the manufacturer said that they're just not supporting those particular pagers anymore. And through the environment that they've expected to work in, it's just a normal piece of equipment that starts to fail over a period of time. Going to the portable radios, the question was, and much the same thing, when were they purchased? And they go back to before 2008 for the majority of them. We have had failures with them, with a few of them, and so we've replaced them as we've needed to. So one or two of them are a little newer. But again, they're an important piece of equipment that we use in regards to communicating on the fire ground and in safety issues. So I think those are probably the two. And the third question was in regards to the ladder truck replacement and size. And we are still in the process of determining what would be best, and of course trying to look at what the city is, but not just for today, but for 20 years down the road. This truck will be a 20-year purchase for us, so we're looking to see what we can do. And we want to make sure that we have there's lots of options out there for this truck. Some of them may require no capital expenditure on the building or minimal capital expenditure, but depending on what we go with in terms of a truck, it's very well possible we could use all of that money to raise the door, move the exhaust system, move various other pieces of equipment that's already in the hall mounted on the ceiling that may need to be moved. So those costs would be incurred in that, and of course that would have to be done prior to the truck arriving. So that's what we're looking at. So.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Corbeil?
Yeah, just a question, Mr. Patterson. Have they ever looked at refurbishing fire trucks? Is that something that's possible?
It's possible. The problem with refurbishing a fire truck is you still end up with, first of all, it comes out of service. So what do we do while that truck is away? We would probably have to rent another truck or try and acquire another truck while that particular truck is out, because usually it's a 5 or 6 month refurbish time. In order to build a new truck, you're looking at, especially a ladder truck, you're looking at anywhere over 12 months lead time to get one built from the manufacturer. So refurbishing one could be a little bit shorter. You still end up with the problems that you end up, it's been refurbished and you've updated as best you can, but sometimes the value is not there. By the time you look at what you have and the warranties and the rest, it's something we could look at, and certainly if that's the direction council wants to go to, we can look at that, but it's not something that typically is done anymore in the industry.
Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It has to be certified. Underwriters has to certify the unit, don't they?
Underwriters recognize the truck, so we can always have a truck that's not recognized if as an additional one, but when we start playing or getting into that area of where a truck's not recognized any longer by the underwriters, we run the risk of starting to increase our insurance costs especially to our commercial and industrial partners that are in the city here.
Councillor Solda?
Yeah. I have trouble with the ladder truck, and the reason is because 1 point something million dollars, right? That's a big one for me. And then you have to do all the infrastructure work in the inside to accommodate the truck. And I just don't understand why we can't get something similar to what we have. And I know of course, it's gone up in price and everything, just like anything else. So I'm just kind of curious. So can you answer that?
So the truck that we have has been a good truck, but it's been brought to my attention on at least a few occasions, and it's one of those things when you have, like, when you need it, you need it. You don't need it a lot of the time, and so there is always that question of, why would you spend 1.25 or 1.5 million on a truck that you very rarely use? But if you don't have it, then it's that much more difficult. It's like an insurance policy, if you will. The difference between a 75-footer and say a 100-footer, which is probably in the area where we're certainly looking at, hoping to be able to go, is that it allows you to be a little bit farther back in the offsets. It gives you that better reach when we're looking at industry and typically with rescues. There's been a lot of work at Catalyst in the last while with tank removal and tank lids, and we've had to rely on a crane in the event that there was a rescue required by a worker there. We were relying on a crane and a basket to be able to reach, because our ladder truck wouldn't do that. So is it possible? Yes, a lot of things are possible, but in order to stay where we are and move forward again for the next 20 years as we look forward, it's something that I think that the city should really seriously look at.
But we have also managed to survive. And what if somebody builds a 10-story building eventually in 20 years? We might allow that or whatever. So then what do we do? I'm playing devil's advocate, and I'm just having a really hard one to wind.
I certainly appreciate that, and even if we went to a 100-footer, we're still not going to reach the top of the 10-story tower that we're here. But we add 2 more stories, or we're able to move a little bit farther away and reach what we currently do, where it allows that versatility of the options list of what we do. And especially around the rescue component, it's a matter of a function of pressure and volume to be able to push water up, but it's also nice to be able to reach up, and it's not just a matter of having an elevated water stream, it's the extra capacity that allows us to reach out. So as another example would be around the marinas, where we'll be able to set up close to the edge of the water and be able to reach another 25 feet out with the fingers that are out for fishing boats and for pleasure boats that are out in the dock area as well. So,
just one more thing. But technology changes. I mean, we can buy a car, and off the lot, they've built 5 other ones prior, next step, same as computers. They've already got how many iPads going right now. And I know that's a stupid analogy towards a fire truck, but it's easier to explain that. And I'm just curious to know what other communities our size purchase. Are they purchasing these huge things? And we don't have to be like other communities, because we are unique, but we have survived with what we have. And
certainly our truck committee is the one that's working together. So it's not just myself that's on this committee. It's the firefighters themselves. It's our fire mechanic. So we're looking at the serviceability of the equipment that we're getting, regardless of what size it is or how much money it is. But and technology is out there. As you said, technology is there, but they're incorporating this technology into the trucks so that they are safer when they operate. They don't get into the possibility of an overload situation. They're becoming more greener, so they're using less fuel. So there's lots of things that, unfortunately, that drive the cost up from a 1997 fire truck to a 2017 or a 2020 fire truck. And you know, I don't know what else I can tell you, other than we will do our very best to make sure that, and justify in our minds at least, of where this money will and why it should be spent.
So one final comment, and then others speak, is that I hope if council decides to go ahead with this, and it gets into the budget, that you come back with different scenarios in trucks.
Yeah, certainly we can do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Poon? Good stuff.
Can you explain to me the number of buildings that are actually directly affected by this additional 25 feet of ladder?
Well, right now, that's what our crew is working on and mapping that out, so we'll have a better indication of where 25 feet will make a difference or not.
Mhm.
And so we're currently working on that right now.
Okay, and then I guess we have to, sorry, how much was the ladder truck again?
Anywhere from approximately 1.25 to 1.5.
Okay.
And I mean, it can go up from there depending on option lists and how big of a truck, what kind of reach. We're talking in the neighborhood of a what they call a 100-foot aerial ladder. You can get the trucks that are 125 and 140, but quite honestly, I don't think we can, you know, once we start getting up into the $2 million mark, I don't think we can afford that.
So if in 20 years we save one life just by having a longer ladder, it will all be worth it?
It's pretty hard to put a value on a life when it comes to that, but certainly it's the ability to have the proper tools for the amount of hazards we have, and that's what the fire service really tries to look at. What, you know, that's the age-old question of how much do you spend on a fire department for the protection level that you want. So.
Sure. Thank you for taking the time to answer those questions. I have one final question. Do you think there's any opportunity for a jointly owned asset with the regional district on some of these more specialty fire trucks? I mean, we all have fire trucks. Beaver Creek is just obviously in the process of purchasing one for them, but a ladder truck, do you think we could ever work toward that? Jointly buying a ladder truck that will protect the whole community, or a different type of equipment?
I think any time that we can look at either cost sharing or not duplicating services is a good thing, especially for the fire service. And it becomes a question in my mind of how we value the different equipment and the different things that the different departments bring to the table. So there is always a value in looking into that, and we'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Chief Patterson. Any final questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing we have on our agenda is the Econics presentation to Council from February 5th, 2015. Water rate review. I don't know if we want to, it's a pretty extensive report. Council, are there questions on it? I think we just included it in for information purposes for the most part. The page that I always look at when people ask me about the water rate increases and why we're making them is page 75 in our agenda. If we want to just, yeah. So this graph here shows, in my opinion, why we're increasing our water rates and sewer rates at, I think this is water specific, but at the rate that we have. So I have had many conversations with members of the public where they've asked why water and sewer rates have gone up as extensively as they have, and recognizing that we have had some very challenging increases in our water and sewer fees. I think it's important for the public to know, and our new councillors, that there's reason and justification behind that. I'm wondering if our director wants to speak at all to, I know we have maintained the increases that we were intended to. Is this kind of still where we're at today? Have new needs arisen, or are we kind of moving forward on this track?
No, I think this is still where we're at today. Director of Finance would actually have better, would talk to this report better than I can, because it kind of predates my coming, or certainly to this position, but also was done before I started with the city. But you'll see, you know, water treatment plant phase 1 with the UV, we've done that. So I mean, we're definitely on that chart. You know, we're holding our filtration deferral, for lack of a better word. We're not being forced to go there at this point. Yeah, I mean, it's all about building a sustainable water fund, essentially, right?
Sure. Okay, that's great. Council, any questions on this report? Councillor Solda.
I understand that with the health authority, standards change all the time, and if we're not on top of it, the price tag gets higher and higher, as we all know. I know in 2013, 14, the presentation was made that our pipes are really aging in that, and I'm really big on that. Let's not patch them up, and let's just change them and go on with it. And I don't know where we're at on that. Can you give us more information on that?
Well, I think you see some projects proposed in the capital plan that are
Yes.
dealing with those aging pipes. You know, we're doing projects today on Argyle Street to replace old pipe. Yeah, there's a lot of needs, certainly in the water, also in the sewer, in the storm, and the separation. Again, we're putting forward a lot of projects, a lot of money. Sooner we get them done, you know, they are cheaper the sooner they're done. I mean, the prices in all of that stuff, supplies and manpower and contracting, is all going up. So, and you know, you can only do what you can do in a given year.
Do you have a rough estimate how many years it's going to take to catch up with our aging infrastructure? I really rough. I know when we had it looked at was like 50, 60 years if we're lucky.
Yeah, I think the asset management work that we're doing will help to get the answer to that question. But yeah, off the cuff at this point, I couldn't answer that.
I'd be interested to know.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Any other questions from council? CAO?
Madam Mayor, if you're done with that topic, I'd like to point out to council that at our last meeting, although there were no questions from council that needed to be responded to, Councillor Solder did make comments about the fact that this budget projects in the RCMP budget projects a 1 officer reduction. And if council does want to hear from Inspector Hunter on that topic, this would be a good time in the agenda to hear.
I have written on my agenda right here, call
Sweet.
up Inspector Hunter,
Nice.
actually.
That.
Why don't we call it in the first 3 minutes?
That's right. So Inspector Hunter, if you would like to come up. Welcome.
He just wants to leave.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think what I'd like to do is just at a high level, and we may get into the weeds, thank you very much, a little bit, to just bring all of council onto the same page. Some I have worked with before and some I have not. And just to give an understanding of the policing budget and where we're at today and where I'd like to see us go. So previous council and CAO Ply worked with them on the budgeting moving forward 1% per year, which is a very difficult task for, as we know, all departments. When it comes to policing, our budget is primarily human resources. If there's cutting, you're cutting human resources. And a tough decision was made that everyone in the room knows, and Tim knows, I did not agree with cutting the police arbitrarily in 2019, but the numbers had to match up somehow. I will say Tim, you did an amazing job in securing the detachment and office manager, which we did not previously have. And it has made an immense change at the detachment. So I thank the city for that. So overall, the way and I'm just going to talk police officers here now. Every year, the BCRCMP comes out with a figure of how much it costs per police officer, and that's a budgeting number for municipalities. And that number includes the police officer's salary, overtime, computers, fixing police cars, replacing police cars, gas for the vehicle. So all our O&M is included in this figure. So for 2019, the figure is approximately $174,000 per police officer. And I can assure you police officers don't make that much money, but that's everything included. And some years, the O&M budget, we don't reach those numbers. It might be a year we don't need to replace a police car, and we don't need to replace computers that particular year. So we are as efficient as we can with that. The pay and overtime, there's not a lot of control over that. Councillor Solda asked a question at a previous council meeting. We had an emergency response team call out for a very dangerous individual that was barricaded in a building. And that's a specialized team that was called into the community, and that is an extra. It's included in our budget. We anticipate these things happen. And for example, that was a $13,000 bill. It's not an extra for the city. You could say if it didn't happen, then that would have been an extra $13,000, but it's budgeted in there for that. So for at least the past 10 years, and I didn't go back any further than that, the city has had a contract for 34 police officers. And I have to say, the contract is there for 34 police officers, and I'm going to go through some quick numbers here. We haven't filled those positions ever. And here's the reason for that. With the understanding that my organization, if we have somebody that goes on parental leave, mat leave, and that leaves, that's not just mat leave. A police officer is not going to be out on the streets when they're expecting. So usually short time into it, they're off the road. So the city doesn't pay for that member at that point in time, up to and including through to the end of mat leave. We have members that are on long-term off-duty sick, legit sick. We have one right now that's been a year and one for 2 years. And we also have the timing of transfers in and out. Sometimes somebody transfers out, somebody can't sell their house up in Dawson Creek, and it takes 6 months for them to get here. So there's a vacancy for 6 months. I am not afforded the opportunity to backfill those positions. The city contract is 34, I have 34. And if there's 4 that aren't being funded, but they're soft vacancies, meaning they're here, they're just not working, I can't backfill those. So I know prior to my arrival, the city went through some financial hardships, is my understanding. So the 34 police officers, it was asked of the detachment, can you only fund, I believe 1 year was 33, 1 year was 32, and then that was slowly ramped back up to 34 upon my arrival. I'll quickly go through, starting in 08, 09, how many police officers the city has actually paid for in these years, and starting in 2009. 31.89. The next year was 30.67. The next year was 29.3. The next year was 31.02. 29.80, that's in 2013. 31.04. 2015 was 29.97. 16 was 30.30. 17 was 29.83. 2017-18 was 28.47, and the 2018, which ends the end of March, we're on pace for 30.48. So you see, we never do pay for the 34, and that's where CAO Ply and I, and budgeting, got together, and there's a slippage of 2 members, so it would be akin $348,000 that, based on averages, that is never spent in the budget. So moving forward, I understand why it was recommended to reduce a position. It's a cost-saving measure, and that certainly did not take into account the crime in the community, community safety, and all of those things. Last year, I spoke about, and right up to and including, not the council meeting this afternoon, but the previous one, I talk about our resources, our proactive time, and that's how you reduce your crime in your community. It's running at about 7%. So we have about 5 minutes an hour to do the stuff that reduces the crime in the community. A vehicle stop takes 20 minutes, just to give you an idea. So with that, last year I said, you know, we need to have about 4 more officers on our general duty strength just to come up to a standard of what would be, allow us to do more proactive work in the community, ultimately bringing down the crime rate. There is a report that it's very close to its final sign-off stage by E-Division headquarters. I will be providing a copy to the CAO and your worship. And it's an independent report from myself, and it's based on 2017. This report says that the Port Alberni RCMP, just our general duty, and those are the uniform members, need a minimum of 4 more police officers to meet the minimum standard of what we would like in our community. Interestingly enough, that is for 2017, and as we know, I presented this afternoon, 2018, our numbers are up significantly from 2017, and for the first 27 days of 2019, our crime is up 20% from last year. We're doing everything we can to knock on that, and it's appreciated, I think, by everyone. Just our solve rate in this community, how many arrests we make, it's one of the best in the province. So they're out there working hard, but just responding to calls, arresting people and putting them in jail is not going to knock down our crime rate. I've said it before, you're not going to arrest your way out of it. It's the proactive work to start doing these projects and working on these crime rings and stolen property, which we simply don't have the time to do right now. So I am on the record this evening. I recognize 4 is a lot. I'm asking for 2 more police officers. Here's the thing. I know one of our members right now, she's expanding her family. She's off the road right now, and then she'll also be off for another 12 months. It's fantastic. I cannot bring a body in to replace that because I'm at 34. So having 2 more officers, at least I would be able to bring in another member to backfill for that and get the boots on the road. Because what happens right now is I take members, school liaison, they're working general duty right now. Crime reduction members, I get them working general. You need a minimum standard of police officers on the road to ensure we have a safe community and we have members available to respond for calls for service. So I'm not even talking tonight about our major crime unit, who takes care of all of our major sexual assaults, murders, attempted murders, kidnappings, extortions. You've seen those things. We have files that are years old we haven't even looked at. We don't have the resources for it. So I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking general duty response. So having 2 more would allow me to at least get close to 32, 33 officers in uniform on the road working. And there's always an opportunity, like we've done in the past, hey, crime's going down. I can very quickly, upon a transfer of a member, not fill that position if we realizing the crime's down, and then, okay, you know what, we're gonna maintain it at 34 police officers. But I can't go the other way. So that is my high-level presentation and my ask of the city.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Corbeil.
Who actually pays when people are off on mat leave or off on sick pay?
The province pays for that, and the federal government, there's a ratio there.
So the city doesn't pay?
Doesn't pay a nickel. And that's why those numbers I outlined, it averaged around 30, I think. Police officers are actually paid for by the city on an annual basis, not 34. And it's for those slippages that I described. And they're always going to be there.
But there's also police that are paid by the province, correct?
I have 9 police officers here at the detachment. 7 of them, there's 5 on general duty. 2 of them work in our major crime unit that assist there, and then 2 are in forensic ident. So 70% of their salaries and expenses are paid for by the province, and 30% are paid by the federal government.
And the city staff that mans the RCMP detachment is 100% paid by the city?
90%. Your worship, 10% is paid by the federal government. If this municipality was under 15,000, that ratio would be 70% by the city and 30% by the federal government.
That's the police force, but we have city staff working.
City staff
That's
themselves is
90%?
100% the city. That's
Okay.
correct.
My last question is, do you have any idea what the average ratio is, officer per 100,000 people, or?
Yeah, we refer to that as cop per pop, police per population. I don't know what the average is, but I can tell you, we are the most expensive RCMP municipal detachment in the province on a per capita basis, which would indicate that we have a lot of police officers here per population. And I'll just give you a little snippet of an example. Qualicum Beach, 9,000 people, 9,000 plus, they pay for 8 police officers. So if we use their rate, let's call it 9, make the math simple. We would be paying for 16 police officers here with that same ratio. We're paying for 34. Vice versa, they would be paying double or not more. Instead of 8, they'd be paying for like 17 police officers. And it has nothing to do with the population. It has to do with the crime types, and the amount of time that we spend on investigating these crimes. And unfortunately, the city of Port Alberni has a high amount of significantly complex and violent crimes, which take a lot of resources to investigate. So I'm not even getting into the fact that we still have 34 police officers for the last 10 plus years. You take an average file, it's 2 to 3 times more work now than it was 10 years ago, due to all the court decisions out there, the disclosure requirement, the investigative responsibilities. I gave an example before of drug trafficking, has a flow chart of about 6 boxes. That flow chart now has about 40 boxes in it. And that's just an indication of the crime rate might not be going up, which it is, but if it wasn't, the amount of time spent investigating these crimes has skyrocketed. And there's a new provincial policing standard that just came into effect January 1st of this year that requires certain crime types to apply what they call a major case management principle. We use the major case management principle on homicides, attempted murders, those serious investigations. Now, the province has now mandated, made it law, that investigative standard and technique is to be applied to several other crimes. So a crime perhaps that took 5 hours last year is now going to take 40 hours. So it just keeps getting added on to our organization. We put a heck of a quality of a product out there, but it takes a lot of time.
Thank you.
Councillor Solda.
It's interesting when you talk about the formula for communities and that, and I know through the ABIC and the UBCM, communities have been trying to change that because we're just on the cusp, right? And they just won't waver on that. And I know that through the contract negotiations. Interesting too is with the RCMP, somebody gets picked up and they have to go back to the station. It takes that officer and maybe the partner off the road to write all the reports and that for how many hours, maybe for the rest of the shift. You want to answer?
And a great example of that is our calls to cases involving mental health issues. So we take a client up to the hospital, usually 2 officers can be up there for 6 hours. Just sitting and waiting, and this is not a criticism of our system, it is what it is, everyone's busy, but we can't just let that person go. They're our responsibility until they get looked at by 2 physicians and either committed to the hospital or released. So those times, they're frustrating, but they're necessary.
And that's been an ongoing situation with the RCMP for many, many years, and that's been very chronic. The other thing too, I just think the standards are changing. The I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed, so the paperwork is even more so than it has been in the past.
And just one comment about the rural area, and we do have people that come to our community that don't live here, and then they are on our radar. I can tell you that MP Gord Johns, myself, MLA Scott Fraser, and the Nuu-Chulnus Tribal Council, we are working with the provincial government with significant energy to have them, I'm looking for the province to come up with 2 more police officers. I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I'm saying is I recognize, and so do they, that the province should buck up and help the city of Port Alberni do policing in this community, because there's a lot of people that are here committing crimes that aren't from here. But it is a big problem. I'm not going to be critical of the government with the ratios that they use, but in certain communities, Port Alberni being one of them, it's not fair.
Councillor Poon? Okay. Okay, Councillor Paulson?
Inspector Hunter, thank you for your report, and I want to commend your leadership and also your detachment for the work that you do in our community. And you presented a report earlier, and a couple of the categories there are actually policing or detective type things rather than responding to complaints. And I noticed that the detachment is working very hard, and those numbers have increased. So thank you very much for the work that you do for our community. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councillor Washington or Haggard? Okay. I've got a few questions. The first one to the CAO, and I'm not sure if we can answer it right away or not. Just to clarify my memory, we are currently, our roughly $7 million policing budget is funding 32 officers, and we fund 2 additional if needed, although it looks like we never get to that full 32 for actual costs, but we fund 2 additional through our contingency fund if needed. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, we have a contract with the RCMP to provide 34 officers, and as the inspector has pointed out, over the course of a year, we don't average out to 34 because there's movement and whatnot. So over multiple years, we experienced an under expenditure, and so at the end of the year, there was an under expenditure so funds were returned to the city by the RCMP, and we, in some cases, council allocated those funds to a project when they came in, and then at one point, council said, let's establish a reserve fund, and we'll deposit those funds there in case there's basically a rainy day fund, in case there's a large investigation or something. And it was capped at $1 million. And then several years ago, Inspector Richards suggested that I believe we moved up, we had, as the inspector said, we moved down from 34 to 32 for budget reasons, and we restored one of the funding for one officer, I believe, by saying, look, we always get these under expenditure, so let's rely on that to staff up. So we did not increase the budget. We actually showed that as an anticipated revenue, the equivalent of one officer. 3 years ago, I believe, before Inspector Hunter arrived, we did the same thing again. We said, we're going to sail even closer to the wind. We're going to anticipate in our budget an expected revenue, the equivalent of the cost of 2 officers. So so while we budget for 34, we also budget our revenue, if you like, of the equivalent of 2 officers. So I think we've saturated our ability to use that anticipated under expenditure to staff more officers. If council wants to consider increasing officers, then I would suggest that you can make a decision now or at any point, but I would suggest you put that on the options list for further consideration. Staff can bring you what a cost estimate would be for that. And council should bear in mind that again, the draft budget anticipates the reduction of 1 officer. If you want to reverse that, then we should add in the equivalent of that and put that on the options list as well.
It looks like we could.
That's a long answer to your question.
That is a long answer, but I think you did answer it. It looks from the numbers that Inspector Hunter has provided like we could potentially underfund another officer and add an officer with, how many we actually end up paying for at the end of the year. Not suggesting that's necessarily the route we want to go. So I would like to know if we could bring back, I guess, what are options for, different options for funding 1 or 2 or 4 more police officers. And I guess to Inspector Hunter, and actually I'll preface this by saying that I was at a chamber Civic Affairs Committee meeting a couple years ago, and I remember a long conversation about the biggest thing holding us back in our community is our crime. And it was a group of business owners, bigger retail style businesses that said maybe we need to add 4 police officers and really increase our expenditure and address this, and because it's holding everything else back since. And I've heard certainly similar comments about crime being the top issue in our community, the top thing that's holding back development, those types of things. Not that I think we can add 4 officers, but, you know, in a perfect world, we add 4 officers. Does that make a difference? Does it make a real difference? Are there other ways to reduce crime?
So if there were other ways, I would be doing it, Your Worship. Yeah, I can assure you of that. It comes down to that proactive time. We simply have 0 time right now, and that's right now. Things could change in a year, right? But that's right now. So all we do in general duty is respond to the call or work on that call. There is very little, if any time, like I said, average of 5 minutes an hour per officer, and a vehicle stop takes 15. What we should be having is more proactive time, and an immediate result, you might see a few big wins there, but we're talking over time. So for example, 2 more members in a crime reduction capacity where we're literally focusing and doing those proactive measures to knock down that crime. I can't predict the crime that our community has had a shift. I think that's Wes. Our community has had a shift in some mental health issues, some substance abuse. This morning alone, in a short period of time, we have multiple overdoses in our community, and sadly one didn't make it. So these things are still very present in our community, and I cannot predict that. At the end of the day, we'll not arrest our way out of it. It has to be more proactive work. It's just simply we don't have the time for that at the moment. And if I could speak real quickly about the reserve fund, in my opinion and opinion of many others out there outside of this community, it's brilliant, it's required. I can tell you what we would call a whodunit murder investigation or a missing person thought to have been murdered. That can wrap up to $1 million very, very quickly. You can talk to your friends in Campbell River a few years ago, got into the multi-million dollars, and you're scrambling versus, you know what, we have a reserve fund here for that, and we're able to get through this year. And I think CAO, Ply, and myself and Your Worship have discussed that fund also. Let's say 1 year, my members aren't fruitful. We're not having larger families created and nobody's sick, and suddenly we fill the 34 positions, but we counted on 2 as a revenue or a refund. Well, that fund could be used for that as well. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you. No, I think we'll.
Okay, good.
I'm assuming you noted my questions.
We've taken that as direction
Great.
to add to the options list.
Yeah,
The costs, or the potential for adding 1, 2, or 4 officers.
I did say 1, 2, or 4, didn't I?
I think that's what you said.
And if Your Worship, one final comment. When it comes to if the community is fortunate enough to get an increase of 1 or 10 or whatever,
1, 2, 4, or 10, did I hear?
I will say the process moves like molasses. There has to be approval through the provincial government, then approval through the federal government after there's an agreement. So it's not an instantaneous thing by any means, and I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that.
Thank you. I think we had another question from Councillor Poon.
Well, it just seems to me that if we're budgeting for 34, shouldn't we actually be paying for 34 instead of having 30 on staff, I guess? On
Your
duty?
Worship,
Sorry.
if we were go to the archives in YouTube land, it was 2 years ago. I believe I was sitting there and I would pounded the table and said, my goal is to fill those 34, and I got 30. So I'm trying hard, and that is the ultimate goal. That's what the city wants. It's just that slippage that I described earlier is unavoidable.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
At an earlier meeting, you spoke about the auxiliary program, and it's slowly coming back. Are we anywhere closer to have an auxiliary police force?
There's no status change, Your Worship, since that last meeting. We're waiting for the province and the RCMP to come to ground on what that Tier 2 looks like. That's where they're back in the police cars, in uniform, with the members, in schools, in uniform, which would be great for our schools because, like I said, our school liaison officer hasn't been in the schools for a long time.
Are there other positions or any specific, and you don't have to necessarily answer this right now, but are there are there roles that we could fill with municipal staff that could we do a combination of police officer and additions of municipal staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. And we can look at many communities do what I'm about to describe, including Nanaimo and other places on the island, where the community policing function, we have a corporal in charge there. And I've spoken to Amelia about this. If that position, because a lot of it is volunteer management, working with the volunteers, and there's always the option to civilianize that with a municipal employee. That municipal employee would work with a constable in the unit, the youth liaison officer, who would take on some of those duties, and then that position could be redeployed, say crime reduction or a more operational. There's always that notion, and you've heard me say it before, if the duty does not require a gun and a badge, why are the police doing it? And I really do believe that. We're expensive.
Okay, maybe we could look at an option of what that would look like as well for this process. Okay, any more questions from council? All right, thank you very much, Inspector Hunter.
Thank you.
For the information and conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to item 2, our draft capital plan. CEO?
Madam Mayor, we did a very high-level flyover over the 2019 capital plan, and today we have our managers at the table. If you can find this on starts on page 37 of your agenda package. If council has any questions, so rather than go line by line through the capital plan because it's extensive, but we are happy to respond to questions from council on items in the capital plan.
I'll let everyone get to the page. 37.
Yeah, 37.
Same on the paper, right?
Yeah, it's on the screen there. If you go up, right there.
Okay. Council, do we want to go through each department and just councillors can say if there are specific projects they want to ask further questions on or have explained further? Okay. So I think what we'll do is we'll just go through the departments. We won't ask you to speak to them unless there are questions, since we have heard an overview. And if anyone wants it further explained, just say. So any questions of the administration section? Seeing none. Fire department, I think we've been through extensively for the evening. Transportation services. So we've got a number of replacements there. Councillor Solta.
So all the vehicles that are listed here, is there anything we can move to a much later date, like more life in them?
So on the 2019 plan for vehicles, two of those are actually part of the same piece of equipment, the Tiger Flail and the tractor. They're a combination unit. They've been IRF'd separately. That absolutely, if we're going to stay in the flail business, we need to absolutely replace that in 2019. It's cost us a lot of money over the last couple of years to keep that thing running. Okay, and it does a lot of good work. It's in our roadside ditches, alleys, all our dike network, creek bottoms, does a lot of work. That piece of equipment plus the one truck, which we've actually moved forward from 2022, that truck is completely rotten right through. The chassis is rotten and it's done. There's 4 vehicles that you'll see there that we actually did move forward all into future years. I think 2021 is where they all ended up.
So, and the dump trucks there, like, is it just because, is it the lift? Like I know wear and tear and stuff like that. I understand that from previous, but because I'm just kind of curious to know more.
Yeah, that particular truck sees a lot of brine. And that's one of the things, once you're salting and brining, it's hard on that piece of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Poon?
When you're replacing these trucks, do you salvage the service box and dump boxes, or do you just sell them off?
If that's possible. In this case, the dump body as well as the chassis are pretty much done. I mean, we'll still sell that piece of vehicle. There'll be a contractor around that will want to use that truck, but certainly not in a safe condition for our use.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to paving and road construction. We've got 2 items in the budget. It looks like Beaver Creek Road widening to Pineo, or Pineo to Compton, and 16th Ave to Bird Street, 325 meters. Any questions on those? Councillor Poon?
Sorry, can you, sorry, which one is it?
We've got Beaver Creek Road widening and 16th Ave to Bird Street. And these are paving and road construction projects.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Solta?
So the Beaver Creek, just to tell me more about the Beaver Creek widening, since I wasn't on council here, so could you explain that?
Sure. In that section, from Indian Avenue or Pineo through to Compton, there is really no shoulder whatsoever in that.
Yeah.
Outside either end or either way from that section, you've got a white line and some paved shoulder to walk on. It's a kind of a narrow, heavily treed section. There are street lights, but yeah, if you see people walking through there at nighttime, it's a little scary.
So are you looking at sidewalking, putting sidewalk, or just the shoulder?
We're looking at widening the shoulder. There's a bit of work to
Okay.
do with some culverts in there and some wet area that needs to be infilled. It's also through the Hoopachesset Reserve, so we've been talking with them about this.
Okay, and the Bird Street project?
So that's 16th Avenue. It's actually Bird Street South. So it's from Bird Street basically to the trails. If you go from Bird on 16th South, so it's above the old high school property.
So is the developer going to be involved in this area? Is that the new division?
The developer up there is building a 15-lot subdivision
Yes.
Off of the road, but that road is done. Yeah, and if we want to repave that, we should replace the water and the sewer and the storm as well in that section. So yeah, if you take a drive up there, you'll see that that road is not in good shape.
So my question, would DCCs kick into that at all? Help with that?
I'd have to defer to somebody else on what was collected for DCCs, but I mean, my understanding is the DCCs go into the general fund, right?
To you.
Madam Mayor, we could draw from the DCC fund, is my understanding, but it's not heavily funded at this point. We've only just started collecting.
So could I ask? Regarding the DCCs, with the new development, we're going to be getting DCCs from the new development, but isn't the new DCCs for that kind of projects and stuff like that? I mean, I know it's limited, but.
Madam Mayor, my understanding is that DCCs are exactly in lieu of costs off the project site, but undefined. And so it would be a decision of the city whether we applied from the DCC fund for this. If you want clarification on this, we can bring it to the next meeting.
I would like clarification. And, I mean, I'm really big on the infrastructure, so I have no problem with that. But if we can get it from another means, it would be great, so then you can move to another project. So, thank you.
I'm wondering on the 16th Avenue project, since there's going to be probably quite a bit of construction going on in that area, does it make sense to do this work before the construction? It's going to increase traffic during building and...
Yeah, the 15-lot subdivision is well underway. That'll be completed, I would think, in the spring and summer of this year. So the timing is actually fairly good for that. I know there's other developments on that site. My understanding is there'll be probably kitty corner is where they're starting, so it may be some time before they get to that upper portion of the site.
Thank you. Any other questions on these two? Councillor Poon?
In the case of Beaver Creek, road widening, how many, do you have any stats on how many people actually use this walkway?
I don't have a pedestrian count on there, but there's cyclists and pedestrians there all the time. I actually live fairly close to that area. And Beaver Creek Road is very well traveled,
School kids.
and school kids as well.
Okay, seeing no more questions, moving on to traffic upgrades. Oh, no, sorry, storm. Any questions on the storm projects? Small capital storm main replacements, and 16th Ave, Bird Street, and this is to go with the last project we talked about. Councillor Corbeil?
Just a quick question. It doesn't seem like there's a lot budgeted for next year. A lot is put off into 2020, 2021, 2022. Is that because that's kind of the limit to what you're able to do, or
I
or
think
it's just not priorities?
you'll see a lot of projects in the water and sewer, which will keep our crews more than busy enough. Yeah, it's just the way sometimes the way they line up, let's say. But there's quite a few more projects in the water and sewer side.
Okay. In the works other section, questions? Yep. Councillor Solda?
Could you just explain the garbage carts and the Victoria Quay Bridge rehabilitation? Can you give us more information on that?
Oh, I don't think we're
Am I
on to that
missing it?
part yet. We're on works other right now.
That's what I'm on. Oh, am I really skipped over?
Year.
Works other.
You're in 2021.
I'm way ahead, darn. I am thinking of the future.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right. What kind of fire truck?
My face going red because it sure feels it.
Okay,
I'll wait.
it's Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Grandview Walkway, the gravel path, is that fairly a good estimate? Or is that still a rough estimate? It was sort of rough last year when we talked about it,
So
the Grandview Walkway.
I wonder if we're looking at an old list, because, so additional 25K on the options list for the, okay, so we're looking at it there. So this is 100,000, actually, that was approved last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right,
It was approved last year for
for
2019,
2019?
but
yeah.
the project now, we believe, is 125.
That's right, we've costed it out, and we're talking again about basically filling in the ditch, culverting it, and paving a shoulder. And that'll be 125,000, so you'll see a 25 on the options list.
Okay, and at the last council meeting, I asked for kind of a general overview of if this project is our highest need for safety. I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
That's a bit of a tough question. It was certainly driven by the neighborhood. Yeah, call it political if you want. Is it a need? There are probably other areas that don't have sidewalk or good walking paths. You know, I see Beaver Creek Road as a higher priority. I guess I'm just only getting into the active transportation network or the plan that was done, I think, in 2013 or 2014. Yeah, we've got a pedestrian network. There's just a whole bunch of different documents that I need to sink my teeth into. So the answer to your question is there higher priorities? Likely.
Okay, thank you. City Hall generator, that one looks like it was approved in 2016.
Madam Mayor, if I may?
Yeah.
We've got an updated number for the City Hall generator, and
Okay.
so after review, we'd like to see that increase from 50 to 80,000. And the additional 30,000 would be for the sidewalk and underground wiring that weren't included in a previous number.
Okay, so maybe we could add that to the options list, I guess, if we have to increase that. Argyle Street creative crosswalks. It says approved in 2017. Does that mean it was oh yeah, so coming from reserve, so assuming that was funded, has there been any progress on that project? I think that was driven by,
Rotary Arts.
yeah, Rotary Arts District.
Yeah, and they were to come to us with some options or some designs, and so far we haven't seen those.
Okay, so it's just sitting in the reserves at this point. McLean Mill Dam repairs. I don't know if the CAO wants to comment at all on that. Maybe not. We've talked about McLean Mill enough for one day.
Madam Mayor, we have quotes on the work, and we believe that we need $233,000. We have 200 in reserve from last year, so we're seeking $33,000 more.
Question for myself, do we have, so I know we want to address, once we finish our contamination testing, we want to make sure we leave money to address any needs there. Is the dam repair something that we are being required to do, or are we choosing to do a dam repair at this point?
Madam Mayor, I think we'll have to bring you a response to that question.
Okay.
And I'd like to point out the $33,000 that we're suggesting that come from land sale. It's an eligible expense.
Okay, and then we've got money, $30,000 for McLean Mill water quality testing. On to parks. We've got replace a 2006 Ford F550 Hull All.
Madam Mayor, I can speak to the Hull
Great.
All. We're confident actually that we can shift that project and get a few more years out of that piece of equipment. So it's staff's suggestion that we move that to 2021.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. I think we will agree with moving that to 2021. That's right.
Love it.
Any further questions on parks? Okay, cultural services, McLean Mill capital projects, 125,000. Questions, comments? CAO, do you want to maybe give an overview of where this money has gone in the past?
Oh, Madam Mayor, I'd really rather not. Council, we fund McLean Mill Society with $125,000 every year for capital, and McLean Mill Society allocates those funds. It was our vision 2 years ago that after investing in some infrastructure on the site that would generate revenue, that by 2019, a higher percentage of that money would go into restoring buildings on site at McLean Mill. So I think we need to hear from McLean Mill Society what their vision is. And as you know, that's a topic that's up in the air.
Councillor Solda?
So, Madam Mayor, is this wise to put this in options? Because we're not really knowing where we're going with McLean's Mill. I know the question was asked earlier, where are we right now in expenses and that with McLean's Mill? So I would like to hear more before we go forward with that.
Yeah, I think moving this to the options list is a good way for us to consider it. I think we all are expecting that there's going to be some changes to structure at McLean Mill. So we should look at the budget when we're having those conversations. Councillor Poon?
Well, is there any way for us to know where this money is going to?
I would say it's probably not allocated to specific projects right now, and it's going to depend what model is used going forward. If MMS continues to run the mill, if another site or if another option is given. CAO?
Madam Mayor, a portion of this funds is allocated to match a grant that we have an application for, and Director Thorpe might be able to speak to that.
Yes, thank you. Madam Mayor, for the Parks Canada cost-sharing grant, I've earmarked $60,000 of that 125 to be earmarked in the event that we're successful with a matching grant. So 60,000 of those dollars would be matched with 60,000 from the federal government.
What is the grant for?
It is for the first portion from the John Dam report. So to look at reinforcing a handful of the various buildings on site, as well as make a plan for future buildings. So looking to to reinforce the various structures on site. So in the John Dam report, you may recall there's a variety of urgent and sort of varying urgent levels of urgency in projects, and so it was our goal with this cost sharing grant to go after the first most critical buildings on site.
Would it impact the grant application at all if we moved it? Like, was a part of the grant it having to be allocated?
Yes, so essentially we would need to maintain that commitment.
At
So if
60,000.
yeah, of 60, yes.
Okay. 60. Okay. Would council like to consider moving this to the options list with the exception of the $60,000, so leaving 65,000?
Yes.
Removing 65,000? Okay. CAO?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to point out to council that regardless of the operating model that we utilize at McLean Mill this year, there are going to be costs. And if we don't retain, at least, even if we want a standstill year, there are going to be costs. And so I would caution council about taking too much money out of the McLean Mill project for fear that we would have unfunded expenditures mid-year.
Councillor Solda?
We haven't seen their budget, and council has asked to see a spreadsheet of expenses and revenues and different things from McLean's Mill, and it's going into the option and leaving so much into this committee as requested. It doesn't mean we're saying no, we just want to take a look at a bigger picture in the long run. And so, I mean, we're going to come back to it. And I think that's, till we see the spread, I'd like to see the expenses. I understand there'll be expenses in that.
Yeah, I think moving it to the options list just means that we want to have greater conversation about the direction. And definitely, you know, we recognize that there's going to be costs associated with McLean Mill regardless of what happens. But we might want to have a conversation about the extent of capital projects that go on out there this year beyond what is required until we have a further plan in place for what the future will look like. Okay. Parks, Recreation, and Heritage. There's a lot on here, so I think I'm just going to pass this over to Director Thorpe to explain these projects.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll speak to two items and then invite my colleagues up if council has any other questions. First of all, midway through the list, the multiplex replaced the Weyerhaeuser lighting LED. What I would suggest is that since staff haven't completed the assessment of what exactly that project might look like, as well as the breadth and depth of that project, my suggestion would be that we retain $10,000 in 2019 to be able to do proper studies and assessment of what that project might look like, and then defer the remaining $100,000 to 2021. So essentially look at a two-phase. So we would cost out and budget and design in 2019, and then complete the project in 2020.
Thank you.
And the second item I just want to touch on is the curling club ice plant replacement. So at this stage, the curling club, it shows here we've committed in February 2018. The curling club was unsuccessful in their grant application, so this is a matching grant that the city would provide. They were unsuccessful again in their 2019 application, and so that's what the suggestion is, move forward to 2020.
It says $80,000, but I remember it being $40,000.
Yeah, I had thought so as well. I'm not sure why it would display 80.
Okay. That's right. Yeah, okay. Council, any other questions on the projects listed? Oh, Councillor Corbeil?
Just a question on the curling club ice plant replacement. How much oversight does the city have on that? And I'm thinking of Fernie and what happened there. Do we know that you know that ice plant is in pretty good shape?
A great question, Madam Mayor. And so my opinion is that we have very much an arm's length relationship. I would like to see us have additional insight into a project like that, as Councillor Corbeil mentioned, with the tragedy in Fernie, which is also why we have the multiplex condenser on the budget list for this year as well, staying at the top of industry standard or getting ahead of the curve. I would suggest that I'll have my staff very close contact with the curling club as we go. So I'm of the thought that we need to have a closer relationship when we're talking about ice plants in our community.
Thank you. Any other questions on Councillor Paulson?
Just going back to the chiller and condenser, that was a project that we put off to this year, and we're okay to get it done this year?
Actually, our chiller is actually waiting for us. It's built, and so our supplier is storing it for us in a safe home, actually just down island, until we're ready for the April install. So it's absolutely on time and under budget at this stage, and the condenser would be, if approved in this budget cycle, would be ordered in the fall and then for April install. So again, on track as well.
It's great to see the majority of that comes from gas tax or from the carbon trust, so that's good.
Thank you. Moving on to Waterworks. Council, this is where we see the projects. Any questions on the list of projects here?
So, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, there's the Bird Street project again. Just wondering how the developer and the DCCs fit in. So when I get that information, could you put all that information? Because it's upgrades for that development mainly, isn't it?
Not necessarily. No, that road was in need of repair anyway. Happens to tie in nicely actually with the new subdivision and the development going on there, but I would say it would have been on a list anyway.
Mm-hmm. Because all the pipes and all the connections, I'm not obviously an expert at that, but the developer is paying for the connections and stuff like that, right, to everything?
To our system
Yes.
on Bird Street, yeah, and a lot of it actually goes downhill the other way, so.
Okay, so I'd like to see how that connects. Okay, thank you.
And it's important to note on these ones that these are funded from the water reserves. So these don't come out of general revenue. So these are funded from those lovely water fee increases, I believe. Yep. Council, any other questions on these projects? Okay. Treatment, pumping, metering. No questions on this list. Okay, sewer system. And most of these projects, it looks, or a lot of them are paired up.
Can I just ask one question? Regarding the sewer and the piping, that we're not just patching, we're actually replacing, because patching eventually breaks down, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to the end of the capital budget. Not to say that we won't review it again. I think we still have conversation to have around the capital budget for sure. To the end for 2019. So we did a review.
I'm right into 2020.
That's right, and Cindy's in 2021.
That's great, we're all on top.
That's right. So I would suggest that we move on to the projects option list for this evening. And go through each of those projects to get a better idea. And then I think we'll probably likely come back at another meeting to the capital budget. So we can get to, what page is that on? Okay. So council, tonight, we are going to hear an overview of each of the projects on our list. And as CAO said, if there are projects that council would like to add to the list to be considered, we can do that. We're not intending tonight that we're going to make motions and add projects to the budget, but rather hear about all of the projects and make notes and ask questions. And we will actually look at what we want to include in the budget at a subsequent meeting. So starting with administration, who would like to speak to administration?
Why don't you start with Mr. Scott to speak about bylaw security enhancement program?
never pushed the button before, but I'm learning. Thank you, Madam Mayor and
Hard to
Council.
remember.
I've seen the mistakes. So
That's
I've
right.
never been on this side. Madam Mayor and Council, as an option before you, there's $25,000 to be allocated to the Security Enhancement Program. This program was, funds were allocated in 2018 for this project. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, resources, and other priorities that were set, it was just launched in 2019 here. So it launched on January 21st, exactly 1 week ago today. And so the program focuses on a matching grant. So it's 50-50 with applicants, up to $1,000. And it's focused right now on commercial buildings only for security enhancements. So that can be exterior lighting, video surveillance, anything that they see fit, deadbolts, et cetera. So we're proposing to have this be a reoccurring part of the budget. And the reason being, there's a lot of interest. In the week already, we've received several applications and a lot of calls from not only commercial, but as well as residential and industrial buildings that are dealing with criminal activity on their properties. So unfortunately, given the funds we have available as a pilot project, we've had to be very specific on what the funds are allocated to test it. We would like to see it move forward and be able to reach all zones and as many people as we can to receive this grant.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Solba.
Yeah, so regarding the monitoring in that, so a business puts it up and hopefully they succeed, a new business comes in, they apply and they put up a security system. 6 months down the road, they close. What happens to the security? Do they get to keep everything, or how does this all work? Because, is it clear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That hasn't been considered. Most of the applicants that we have been longstanding businesses here in the community. There are certain requirements that we will be evaluating on the applications for who would be eligible. At this time, that's not a consideration right now.
So when is all the rules and everything coming out, or is there something that we can take a look at for future?
Absolutely. There is an informational package on our website currently, and I can certainly make sure that Mayor and Council receives a copy of that.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Cordeal.
Mr. Scott, that program, it's up to $1,000, is that correct?
That is correct.
Matching, yes. So in fact, we could have 25 businesses and that would be the end of it. Do you know what's the price of security system? I haven't got a clue. I mean, could we do 100 different businesses, or are we good for only 25?
So I had the opportunity to speak with a security consultant and get more information to make sure that we were, budgeting correctly for allocating funds, that they could have, proper equipment that had, if they chose to go with a camera, it would be a quality image that could be used, potentially by RCMP if there was an incident, and that footage can be shared. In consulting with him, he did advise me that $1,000 could get, well, it would potentially be $2,000, could get you a great system and installation fees included.
Thank you.
So one more question. So do the people who, if they put up a monitoring system, do they have to be, like I have alarms in my house and it's monitored in a company. So do they have to have it monitored, or they can put up whatever, Costco or wherever they want to buy?
So part of the application process would be evaluating, what their investment is going to be into the program. So if, say, for instance, if they choose cameras, we want to make sure it's a higher quality and coach them and guide them into, purchasing the proper products that would be effective. Alarm systems, we haven't received an application for it yet. It's certainly something that could be considered as an enhancement, but there would be criteria. It would need to be, a proper system put in place.
Okay. And are we looking at certain areas in our community where, of course, there's higher crime compared to some other areas? So is there a difference in what we're looking at when we evaluate?
Absolutely. So the application is extended to all commercial properties. I was fortunate enough to sit down with community policing, and I sat down with the corporal, I believe, there. And we generated some statistics relative, high crime areas. And so there is a priority list of despite, we'd love to have all commercial, but if there is an excess of 25, given the funds we could allocate, then it would be based on crime statistics and properties that might be a higher priority.
And do we have a deadline date?
Absolutely. Right now, it's open for a month, so it's running till February 21st, and we'll evaluate the first intake. Pending that closure, if we still have funds available, we would be reopening it up. Further to that, that would be the time, I would say, at the second intake, where we would look at maybe extending past commercial buildings and looking at residential and industrial if we still had funds remaining.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Next up, planning, OCP update. I'm assuming from our new manager of planning.
Look at that. Fancy. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So before you is the planning OCP update. As you might have heard a couple times from some of the conversations and passing over the past few weeks since I've been here, is the flag that our OCP coming up in April will be 12 years old. Now that's fine. That's totally all right. It's still a valid document to guide the city in future development and growth. But it is best practice for municipalities to seriously consider redoing their OCPs every 15 years. And from my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, CIO, but our OCP hasn't had any minor tuning on a regular, frequent basis. So we need to probably seriously consider, at the very least, doing some minor revisions and community consultation and engagement to revise or update the OCP, or upwards and beyond, do a major overhaul and redo of the OCP. And that's at the whim of your decision.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Easy. Thank you very much. Next we have from the fire department, fire hall door access hardware and fire hall HVAC controls upgrade. Chief Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the door access controls, we currently have two doors that members can't access off the back due to the failure of the equipment. And so this money will allow us to not only repair that, but bring the equipment in the hall to the same level that we have currently at City Hall and other buildings within the city. And the second one is the HVAC control. So before my time, there was an upgrade done on the boiler systems and the control systems, but they don't align with the rest of the buildings within the city. And this would allow us to make things easier for our facilities manager to be able to control the HVAC controls within the fire hall.
Okay. Council, any questions? Councilor Sultan.
So on the doors, I thought we had replaced them a few years back to make it more accessible in that.
Yep, that certainly was done, but the system, for various reasons, we've replaced the computer board in it once already, and just recently, in the last 4 months, another computer board went out, and so the hall's broken into different areas, if you will, and so currently we're only able to access into the fire hall through the fob system that we have, through the back door and the front door. And if it goes down, short of going back to an old key system, that's the only way we'll get into the fire hall, if nobody's there.
So is that a normal norm for things like that to break down? I mean, a computer is a computer, but it does.
I'm not a securities expert, but so I can't answer that.
Okay, and the other one is the AVAC. I thought that was also upgraded not a few years back. What's the lifespan on a AVAC?
Again, I don't have answers on what the expected lifespan on it. I just know that currently it is extremely difficult for for us to be able to control the heat and cooling within the fire hall. I don't have the expertise to be able to run the program, and I know that it doesn't match what the city currently uses in the rest of the buildings.
We have that problem here.
That's right, we can't control
So
the heat in
we-
this room either, we just freeze.
I don't have,
I can appreciate that. I guess maybe you can appreciate that our firefighters are in that building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Chief Patterson? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to transportation services. Would the Director of Engineering and Public Works like to first tell us about the vehicle needs? Maybe the CAO would like to take this one.
Madam Mayor, yeah, I would if you wouldn't mind. So we've had a change in personnel, and with that comes a bit of a change in practices. So 2 directors ago, we had a director of engineering, a city engineer who, for various reasons or his own reasons, chose to drive his own personal vehicle and charge back mileage to the city, and we were happy to do that. The most recent person in that position did not provide his own vehicle, did not have a city vehicle, and did not get out in the field as much as we would have liked, as well as he was only managing engineering, not managing public works. So he did not have a vehicle, and he had to catch a ride with anybody when he wanted to get out to see a site. The current Director of Engineering and Public Works manages engineering and public works. He's currently driving a pickup truck that is committed to a position that is vacant right now, which we hope to fill very shortly. So he's going to lose that vehicle, and he is not at all interested, I've tried, he's not at all interested in providing his own personal vehicle. So we need him in the field, and we need to provide a vehicle for him to get around.
Thank you. Questions, council?
So, just a quick
Councilor Silva?
question. So, I'm really being nasty today, but the vehicles that we are replacing, there's none that, I mean, obviously we're replacing them, but we can't use those that were for now, or no?
That's right.
I'm just asking, because, you know, the public out there sees all these vehicles, they are wondering why suddenly we all need new vehicles, you know. I just need to ask that question. Somebody want to answer that? Why we can't?
Well, the position I'm in hasn't had a vehicle for, I don't know how many years, and I don't know when the last time it did.
It actually, at one point, it did have a vehicle, and we were short of vehicles at the works yard, so the incumbent said, take my vehicle, I'll drive my own. And so I blame him. So since that time, we haven't had a vehicle assigned to that position, but we need one.
Okay. Do we have a policy around which positions get vehicles and which don't? Just because we do have managers who travel around and don't have vehicles. So just wondering if there is a rationale. You don't have a vehicle, for instance.
Thank you for bringing that up. We have a policy about who's allowed to bring a vehicle home, or who's required to bring a vehicle home. And, but I don't think we have a policy around which positions have a vehicle assigned. We need our Director of Public Works and Engineering to have access to a vehicle, one that can get them around in inclement weather as well. We had an interesting conversation during the most recent snowstorm a couple of years ago when he called me and said, I can't get around, my truck's only 2-wheel drive. So, I mean, it might sound silly, but when we really need our people, we really need our people. And putting a vehicle there is not a bad allocation of resources. I get that you get beat up in the public for that.
Thank you. LED lighting upgrades, parking lots at Echo Fieldhouse, Curling Rink, Wood Ave, and so on.
So, yeah, those are, I mean, they've been on lists, I think, for many years. There's actually another one that was brought to my attention today, which was Abbey Field, which I'm still looking into whether or not we actually own those lights or not. But my understanding is they've been maintained by our electricians for forever. So I think the question was asked as well at the previous meeting what the payback was. Councillor Slaughter, I believe, asked that question. When we did our street lighting project in 2016, the payback was about 4 years. We did get about a quarter of that paid through PowerSmart grants. I've sniffed around a little bit. PowerSmart grants aren't available. But for this type of project, I'm told we can probably get about a 15% grant that's out there. So payback, I would say, on a project like this is probably 5 to 6 years.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Street lighting upgrade, main roads.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. So the CAO asked me to put something on there for basically upgrade of our street lighting. There's been some comments, I think, in the public recently about dark spots, dead spots, maybe some of the lighting isn't as bright as it could be. There are different light levels out there. I mean, for our lights, the lights on the metal poles, that was engineered to basically have equivalent lighting from what was there previously. We do have 1,000 streetlights in our community that are owned by BC Hydro. I haven't really put my mind to, we can request on a light-by-light basis, or maybe even a street-by-street basis, that they upgrade, say, from a 150 watt high-pressure sodium to a 250 watt high-pressure sodium, but we need to look at those areas, or maybe get a feeler for where people think that, you know, the dark spots are. So again, wanted to put something in there to do something to meet that need. I think there are some options on both our own city-owned lights as well as the hydro lights.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Councillor Solda?
There was discussion, I don't know if it went to the traffic committee, where the young man that got killed on 10th Avenue on the dip there. Is there, what's the lighting there? Is it bright enough, or?
So this discussion kind of, part of it was around the crosswalk and crosswalk safety and intersection lighting. There are lots of lights there. There was a discussion about a potential bit of a dark spot on sort of on the south side of the Dunbar and 10th intersection. I haven't had a chance to sort of look at that at night to see that for myself. I think we would look, 10th Avenue would be one key area I think that we would look at for any kind of a street light upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Paulson?
Just that particular area that you're talking about, and this is a discussion for another time. They're offering grants to do LED, but BC Hydro has not done their own lighting. And I don't know what the reasoning is. They're running pilot projects, but that area where that accident happened is, those are BC Hydro poles. And yeah, it's dark there. And if it had been LED lighting, just speculating, you never know.
Thank you. Interesting. Moving on to traffic, Councillor Haggard?
I thought you were going on to the next section, never mind.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just going to traffic circle engineering study.
Again, we've had some conversations around potentials for traffic circles in the community, and I think the CAO was saying, we should maybe move forward on this. I don't really have a particular spot that stands out for me, but I think if we engaged somebody in the know, I mean, other communities have lots of these. I think if we spend some money to come up with the best possible location, if that's what council wants, there's work to be done on cost estimating and conceptualizing it so that we get some buy-in, I think, at the community level if we were to move ahead. So.
Thank you. And CAO?
Madam Mayor, as the director has pointed out, I've asked to have something on there around traffic circles. Council's been asked by members of the community to move in the traffic circle direction, no pun intended. And we thought if you want to consider that, then it would be appropriate to provide some engineering funding. And if it's not on your priorities list, then it's not on ours.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Corbeil?
Just a concern whenever you hear about studies, especially when you're talking to folks out in the McDonald's or something, their hair kind of goes up the back of their neck, and why do we have to do a study? And I kind of wonder, why would you need to do a study on a traffic circle? Surely there must be people within the city that know where we need them, or where the potential is.
I
Do
know
we
you
actually
don't
have
like
to
traffic
hire
circles.
somebody to do a study on traffic circles, I guess is the question I'm trying to get to.
That's a good question. Like I said, I personally don't have a, any intersection that stands out for me that would appeal or say, hey, this is screaming traffic circle at me. Yeah, good question. I don't have a good answer, sorry.
That's fine. Councillor Solta.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, we have a Transportation Committee, it could be referred there. I mean, we have experts sitting in that room as well as members of the public, but that's just something I thought I'd bring up. The other thing too is regarding the traffic circle, maybe that's an option list, in that
This is
sense.
the options
I know.
list.
I mean, like, the thing is, I would like to see the Transportation Committee to look at this and instead of spending the $30,000 and put it somewhere else. Anyways,
Any other
It's out
comments
there.
on traffic circles? Councillor Paulson, do you want to tell us your feelings on them? We do.
If you wanna see a dog show, go down to Qualicum and have a look at that one. You've got people driving through there that have no clue,
tell me, I got lost.
signaling in and out, it's just,
Right,
well, I hate to narrow down to seniors,
that's right.
but it is people that don't know how to properly drive a traffic circle.
Okay,
Makes more problems.
moving on from that
Thank
topic.
you.
Thank you for
Don't
sharing
get me
that.
started.
That's right. Why did I ask? Councillor Poon.
Well, I think anything we do surrounding traffic circles will need to accompany that with lots of education to the public, and so they know how to use them.
Absolutely.
Send it to the ATC so I can spout off there too, okay?
Okay, on to paving. We have Bird Street,
Thank you.
16th to the mayor's house. As our first project. Would you like to speak to the necessity of this project?
The pavement is very bad. I actually hoped to do that a year or two ago, and I was gonna try and get it in through the operations or even through the money that council put for additional paving. But with all the traffic, the additional traffic from the subdivision up the road, the Upland subdivision, chose to hold off, was gonna do it at the end of last year, and then we got weathered out, so, because it is $60,000 worth, I thought I'd put it on the options list for this year, but absolutely, it needs some repaving, so the proposal would be to mill it and repave the driving lanes in that section from 16th to Estevan.
It is a bad spot. Do you know, I know there's gonna be home construction up there, Upper Bird, for a long time. But is the majority of the heavy truck traffic done?
Yeah, the trucks hauling dirt and gravel and asphalt and stuff are done, yeah.
Councillor Washington, did you have a question? Okay, our next project, additional paving and road repairs.
Again, for council's consideration, there's plenty of other areas, I think, that we could do some mill and repave, in areas that don't need infrastructure underneath replaced. One area that came to mind the other day when I was driving through, and I'm reminded of a couple of calls that I had over the last couple of years, was in front of the hospital. So I think when the intersection was built there, they built around it, and now the old asphalt down the middle is in terrible shape. And I think the comments were that some people were getting shaken out of their gurneys on the ambulances as they were heading to the hospital. So it is in bad shape.
Bad shape. On the storm projects, we've got Montrose 6th Avenue to 9th Avenue.
Yeah, so that kind of ties in again with what we've been doing on 6th Avenue in the Coal Creek area. And in talking with our engineers, we realized that the 8th and 9th Avenue areas, when they were reconstructed a number of years back, the pipes were put in the ground in those areas for separation. And that all flows down through the Montrose area. So that would be would add a lot of separation just by putting a pipe up Montrose from 6th up to I think 8th or 9th actually, yeah.
Okay, questions? Councillor Paulson?
Just alluding to capability and lining the projects up over this year, next year or something. Are these actually projects that you could actually do this year?
I believe we
Considering
can,
what's
yep.
in the hopper already?
I believe we can, yeah.
Okay, good.
And 8th Avenue, Dogwood to Cedarwood?
Yeah, another area that's, we've had a lot of issues with for the last 2 years. And yeah, our guys are saying there's a sanitary sewer there and storm that needs to be replaced. Full of roots, and yeah, we just have one issue after the other.
Questions? Okay, moving on to traffic upgrades, traffic signal head LED upgrades.
Guess I'm up for a while here.
Yeah, it's just all you.
The electricians tell me, and again, I have to rely on them, the signal heads and all the heads, I think we have 27 red, green, amber main heads, and then we have all the associated lower heads and the LED boards in those, and the heads need to be replaced. So I don't think physically the shrouds will get replaced, but the guts inside them need to be redone.
Works other, the Grandview walkway we've heard about already. Are there any other questions on the Grandview walkway? Okay, so just to be clear, $100,000 in the budget. Was that funded last year or put in the budget last year to be funded from 2019?
I believe it's to be funded from 2019, and that's why we put it in 2019.
Okay. Councillor Paulson?
Just a quick question on that Grandview walkway and the additional cost for infill and everything. Is that something that could come out of gas tax? Possibly.
We can bring back that answer at
Okay,
the next meeting.
thanks.
Okay, Beaver Creek widening, Pineo to Compton, additional cost for paved shoulder instead of gravel.
So again, that was the additional cost. I think previously when it was in the budget, it was considered just to be a gravel widening. Again, considering we're talking about paved shoulders in other areas, generally our paths and well, our shoulders would be paved where people are walking on them.
Okay, moving on, we have the Gertrude Street Bridge rehabilitation. And I've had a lot of questions about the Gertrude Street Bridge already, and haven't we done it already? So if you could clarify what was done and what needs to be done, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think maybe the confusion is around which Gertrude Street Bridge. So there's a Gertrude Street Bridge over Catsuxis Creek, which we spent $500,000 on 3 years ago. This is the bridge over Roger Creek, just near the Stamp and Roger intersection. Probably our largest, well, definitely our largest and most expensive structure in our inventory. Again, I think there was discussions last year around, we've been monitoring some timber supports underneath the bridge, but really the cause for the problems down below is at the north pier, the joint and the seal. They're gone, so there's jackhammering of concrete, and of course there'll be lots of traffic issues. The estimate that we put forward is $200,000. I think we can do that, and probably a few more issues. I had a recent inspection. There's some riprap that's missing underneath that bridge, and a few others. There's some painting and things that needs to be done to keep that thing in shape. So we would package that.
Okay, Councillor Solda.
So if this project goes ahead, will it be contracted out, or will our crew do this?
This would be contracted work.
So wasn't the last one contracted out too on the Gertrude?
Correct.
So, and they went over their budget, what they put down.
The Catsuxis Street Bridge, I believe that's what
Yes.
we're referring to.
I look
mean,
outside my window and I see that bridge.
there was many additional things that the engineers of the day didn't consider. And when we opened that bridge up and took it apart, there was quite a number of other things that needed to be done, and didn't make any sense to put Band-Aids back over.
Mm-hmm. So my concern is what happens with this one? I mean, is there a possibility that this bridge here will have the same or similar issues?
The scope of work is way more well-defined for what we're doing here. It's not a redecking. We're not pulling the deck off. We're actually jackhammering out the long joint, the transverse joint across that north pier and replacing it. All those items are easily costed, let's say.
Okay.
I propose we change the project name of this to Roger Creek Bridge so that, get away from the Gertrude Street Bridge
Yes.
name. Any other questions on this one? Okay. Line painting machine, power driver and trailer.
So that particular piece of equipment is something that would basically attach to our line painting machine. Our line painting machine is very heavy. Right now, you have to not only push it on and off a trailer, but when they're doing, say, angle parking lines on Argyle or any of our steep streets, we see this as, just back a little bit, we've had some work-safe claims around moving the other piece of equipment as well. This will allow us not only to do line painting work quicker, it'll allow us to take on some of the, let's say if we've just paved a block, they'll be able to do the striping and that, which we would otherwise have to contract out.
That's great. Questions? Okay. On to parks. We have parks upgrades, Paper Mill Dam stairs.
Good afternoon. Good evening, actually, Madam Mayor and Council. So the paper mill downstairs is from the main beach area up to the upper level is rotting and deteriorating and getting to be a hazard. It's probably 12%. And they need to be replaced as long as the handrails. So that's the $10,000 we need for that.
Okay. Any questions from council? Okay, on to park upgrades, playground, eating area, Harbor Key.
Yeah, we got great funding from you guys last year. Everything was going great. We got the fall protection new matting put down. We successfully got the windscreen put up, the aluminum with the brand new glass, and we're just finishing the sidewalk and the brick repair. And the upgrade on this one is right now 8 to 10 months a year we have a temporary 20 by 20 tent set up for additional use for the people, the farmers market, and then also other playground stuff when it's raining or too hot for people. So we're approaching and looking at hopefully putting an aluminum truss system with metal roofing on top of that to make it a permanent structure.
Okay. Park upgrades, Penny Lane Bridge.
So the Penny Lane Bridge, it's probably built in the 80s. It's starting to decay, and the supports are old logs, so they're rotting quite badly. So what I would like propose to is years back we bought these floats that we're actually using at Scott Kenny Trail, and they're singles. So you'd like to put 2 singles there and deck across the new railings and be a cost-effective way to do a bridge that would probably be double that if we did it any other way. So we're trying to use materials that are already in stock, and we may have to shorten it a bit, but we can make it work and be a short shutdown because we do a lot of the work off-site before we remove the bridge.
Okay. Okay, Blair Park Spray Electrical.
Well, another great one you guys let us do last year. So we got all the drainage done this year. We got one spot that is in the midfield that they're just going back to the drainage. So there's one spot in the midfield that we ran out of time to do some backfill materials to bring the water to the new system we built. So that will be getting done this spring. This is not part of it, but while we had it open, we did throw some wiring in there and some conduit for an electrical spray park. I call it the panic button, the Staples button, but it's sort of like we have at Roger Creek, so that people don't actually have to rent the park anymore. They could just go up to the button and press it for their kids. It would be conserving water also because we can put a time limit on it. And also we'd get the power from the existing house that's there. That's ours. that we rent out, and I'd bring the power over to the gazebo that's there. Well, we could actually put power there and some lighting, and then run the power down to the activator, so it'd be a great system for two purposes that would pay for one.
Is Blair Park the only park? We have the spray park on 16th Avenue as well.
Yep.
Are there any other parks, spray parks that we have?
Those are the three, yeah.
Okay,
And the other
just
ones
the
are
three.
water features, like Williamson Park and Gyro.
Okay, and could the 16th Avenue Park be done for roughly the same cost?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would suggest we put that on the options list as well, because I think if we're gonna have these spray parks, let's have people using them during the summer and not them sitting,
Yeah.
you know, having to go to the city to rent a,
Because after we had our mechanic redo the heads at Roger Creek Park, we had a lot of good response off that. Like everything was flowing nice, and our people did a lot of drainage stuff there too as well. I mean, they do get plugged up because kids like to plug the pipes up, but our crew at the parks did an awesome job at the park, as you can see, with the brand new facilities there. So we know we like to carry on with the other parks and get them upgraded. That's been deteriorating for years, and I think the Blair Park's probably 30 years old.
yeah.
So we'd like to
Heavily
redo the spray, the spray heads there as well, and then paint the articles have never been painted, so it'd be nice to highlight them as well.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, on to the package of Canal Beach, if you want.
Okay, so a lot of these would be phased in. So we did a study. I got the materials list for the pier decking. So we're hoping on others helping us or supplying us with some materials. So that'd be the decking of a walkway to a large pier at the end with railings. The phase 2 part of it would be an off-ramp on the side of it that would actually go down to a ramp to another waiting area that would actually go onto the floating pier that could be used as well. So it's a 3-part system. What else do we got there? We got the washrooms that are, the porta potties are heavily used. Right now they're getting currently pumped out twice a week. And we don't have any current sewer systems down there. So the system that we could use actually has its own septic tank involved, so it would be a pump and haul, which would work. We could do a dry system there originally until we do get guaranteed water down there. That's the other issue we do have. We don't have guaranteed water. We do have water, but it would be nice to research that as well.
Council, any questions on any of those? Councillor Solda.
It's a lot of money.
It is,
And,
yeah.
We're looking at here when there's a lot of other projects. To me, I look at, yes, okay, our washrooms, if that helps, yeah, I have no problem, but do we actually need to do all these projects? Can we do them in stages? I thought service groups might be interested.
That's what we're hoping, and yes, it could be easily phased, and that's why we broke it up to three different ones. That's why we grouped it up to 1, 2, 3.
And the other thing too is that there should be, wonder if there's grants out there to look into this.
We have been looking. We're looking for partners. That's definitely for sure.
Because, I mean, I have no problem one day doing the decking and that, but it's just, you know, when we have some other important things, like we're talking about the SO beach development and other areas that
Yep.
need it. I think we've put a lot of focus on the canal beach.
Yep.
We need to worry about our other infrastructure part of it, and we can go back, but
We could also phase that if you guys wanted to. Instead of the 120, we could phase it and just do the, like, say, like, do 50 feet and then put the railings at the end of that and then just phase it again. We could do it in 6 years if you wanted to. It's, you know, it's totally up to you guys how you want to phase it, but we got the engineering on the pilings, which come out positive, really good. And the engineers looked at everything else, and everything else looks very positive for what could be done. And the same kind of pier idea was done at the, right beside the SO Beach, the government wharf assembly that's by the Harbor Key that was done for the LNG plant.
I just know that our parks, there's a lot of new parks that we need to change, and I know
Yep.
we're applying for grants and that, but if we don't get them, we need to still upgrade because of safety.
Yep.
And here,
Yep.
that's my concern,
Yep.
so
For sure.
I'll just voice
Mhm.
that.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I guess I want to come back to the decking, and if you do the math there, it's a $340,000 project, and whether you space it out or whatever. I know that the engineering on the pilings came out good.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, they're still 70 years old. And my thought on this is, if you wanted water access there, just to put in a small floating pier and leave it at that. And also, if you do that, it leaves you in a dollar value where I think it's easier if a service club or somebody wanted to step to the plate, they could probably, it would be within their means and within their capabilities. But for me, decking that pier out there, all it's giving you is an observation deck. And I think you need access to the water where you can actually go out there with a kayak or or
That's what
paddleboard
the
and
floating
watch
part of it would be.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, the decking of the pier is, anyway, I'm just not in favor of it, but
Councillor
talk to me.
My questions have been answered.
Okay, great. Moving on, we have Victoria Key Shelter.
So the Victoria Key Shelter, there's one spot where it's well used. And we do have to do some repairs on the deck itself. The railings are failing, so is the decking. And the Rotary Club of Aerosmith of Port Alberni actually offered to do a 50-50 sponsorship. So this is a great opportunity, and that group would love to come and talk to you guys about their contribution of $15,000 towards it, and the city would give 15 for the other portion that would be doing the existing decking and railing. That would put a beautiful little roof over top of the existing deck that's there.
Just tell me where you're talking about the shelter, where is
Okay, at the Victoria Key, there's two different peering, looking decks. It'd be the one closer to the center.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's got the horseshoe near it there. Yeah. It's the Rotary Club with Aerosmith. It's the AM group, headed by President Larry McGifford right now.
Okay, and SO Beach Development.
So that's a new one. That's new land that we just acquired, and we figure with the cruise ships coming along, it would be a good time to upgrade that area to make it a beautiful little spot. And we could also make it one of your little parks that we could go for a coffee or something at lunch once the cruise ships are done and over with, and throughout the year for us. It's a beautiful spot, nice view, so it would be a start of looking at developing it, and also also we want public input in this one as well, probably more to start with.
Councillor Paulson?
With this one here, is this one that we could phase in over time?
We could phase it.
Like, what would $20,000 get us before
I
the
think
cruise
what we
ships
should do
arrive,
is get some infrastructure, which way we would like to go. And I mean, for the cruise ships, I mean, I've been thinking about it at night, actually. It's pretty crazy. But we could even get, turf brought in for the weekend, for the cruise ships for this year. And then we can actually consult more on this further. But I'd like to do some kind of a phasing thing, like you said, Ron, if we could just get it going with getting the infrastructure in there. Because we want to put lighting, we want to put some other stuff in there. So, and the biggest thing is the protection of the people, of the public, when they want to use the park. And the other thing we got to worry about is parking for that area as well. If we're going to introduce 10 picnic tables, well, where are we going to park, right? So, looking at the area across the street, it's looking great. We could maybe do something with the railway there, and so yeah.
You've been known to liberate turf before, so.
The grass.
Millstone Park?
Yeah.
Councillor Solda?
And that worked out well.
So we're talking about a little pocket park, which I'm
Exactly,
really big
yeah.
on. And
That's why I snickered the
I
last
know.
council meeting here.
But while we're talking about the key there, what about the clock tower? Do we have an update on that too? Because public has
Done
been
before the cruise ships still?
It is still our goal to have it
'Cause
done.
I heard that.
Paint might be wet when the first cruise ship arrives, yes.
Working on it.
Oh, okay.
In progress.
It's in progress.
Done before May.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Russell Field light pole repairs.
So we had the consultant from Vancouver also test all our poles and all our facilities, and they found to be 3 that were very immediate replacement. So those are 3 that we'd like to replace right away and keep up with the lighting that's there for Russell Field. And that's the upper field, the lawn, the one that's got the lawn on it, not the gravel part.
Okay, and Williamson Park basketball court?
Yeah, so that's part of our next project. And if we were not successful in getting our grant, we would like to have the 25,000 put aside for the basketball courts. It's becoming really popular. Gyro is used all the time. And there's a lot of people that come to us on the north side of the a city that were requesting or asking where could we set a basketball court up, and there's two individual courts there right now that are kind of uneven, so it'd be nice to copy the court that was done at Gyro to just a little 3-on-3 basketball court. It doesn't have to be full size, and we would actually put it in a spot where we could, if we ever got this grant and if they wanted to phase it, it would be part of the whole structure that would be laid out for the new grant.
Just a quick question regarding the grants. Do we have an idea when they're going to make a decision, or how does it?
No, I'm still waiting to hear what the timeline is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we have 2 Scott Kenny Trail projects.
Yeah, so the first one be the 4th bridge. It was originally designed with a 5th bridge, and I did some consulting with the biologist and the fisheries people, and we could actually get away with a 4th bridge and have a side channel to it, so we wouldn't have to go through the previous mayor's area property, because there's a big cliff area there. So we'd walk up to the cliff area, then walk over to the 4th Avenue, or the 4th bridge, sorry, to the south side of the creek, and that would bring us, and we could actually go underneath the train trestle on underneath, and it would give us to Roger Creek Park. So it would actually do the connection, and then eventually, hopefully from there, we'd actually go down to Victoria Quay through the backside by the old Tidebrook Motel property that we actually own right now as well.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Solda?
So for the trails, is there any grants and that we can apply?
There was tons, and we did apply, but it got on hold once the government changed. So all the applications that were previously put in are on hold, and they're going to go through their system of where they want to allocate their monies. So we're on hold right now. We'd have to reapply though. So yes, we are waiting for the application grants, and that's part of it as well.
Okay, and on these trails, lights? Is there lighting? What are we doing here?
Well, if we did, we'd have to go solar, because it would be
Yes.
it would be more cost effective to go solar, but it could be done, yes. And I think the trails turned out to be beautiful. We do monitor it, and we got to get back down there, do better bush cleanup now because of the storm, but we did, our gardeners did a wonderful job of opening up all our trails swift and well done. They did a great job, and our crews are busy doing everything else, but we will get down there and open that up a bit. But I think with the lighting idea is a great idea.
Well, I just know from past, for safety,
Yep.
and just for young people walking and the safety there, we've had issues in the past.
Yep.
And trails, to me, that was my concern about expanding our trails if we didn't have lighting of some sort
Yep.
for safety.
And there'd be another place I'd like to also start putting park benches and picnic tables as well. Throw the system, so there's no real rest areas than a log sitting there or something, and that's what brings us to the Scott Kenny Trail, the stairway to Southgate area. After the 3rd bridge, just immediate to your right, once you go over the bridge, there's a nice actually spot, the rest spot up top, that we could actually connect. That would be another one we could, if we're not going to go ahead with the 4th bridge, we should have a relief somewhere from the east, from the north side to the south side of the trail. Would be nice to, have a safe, there's a spot there that's very steep and rigorous, so it'd be nice to have a safety zone for people to exit out if anything ever happened via fire or anything, or wildlife, it would be nice to have a exiting point instead of turning around and backtracking.
What about signage on trails? So Scott Kenny Trail, my first time in there, I thought I probably would never get out.
It's very, very new, yes.
Yeah.
And the
Beautiful
last time we
trail.
did some
Difficult to
beautiful
navigate.
signage is when we had, back in, I believe it was '09, we had the laid off loggers that got hired by the city through a government grant. And be a nice thing, because we still have some of those uprights and those holders for the cedar I mean, if you guys don't want to go see her, that's fine, but yes, we could put a budget towards next year of doing that as well. That's something else that was talked about very heavily, and that's something that I support dearly, because it's, like you say, is, I'm not the best one with, where's the sun today, right? You know, so.
Yeah. Councillor Solta.
Down there trying to find the mayor.
Yeah, that's right. The mayor went for it.
Lost but not forgotten.
Lost.
Interesting when the mayor mentioned signage, because I took a trail and when I started the trail, it said it's a 4-hour walk, and should be wearing proper shoes, and they were explaining the terrain.
Yeah.
And I went, yeah, I'm not in the right shoes, and I didn't take the trail, right? And I think that's important to explain that, and some kind of map
Yeah.
on it. But another thing that I've seen on trails is markers. So if you have an accident, you know you've passed marker 6 or 10,
Yeah.
and the safety is
And
there.
911 would be,
Yeah, so.
no, I think that's a wonderful idea, and yes, it's something that we do want to get done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I'll agree with you on that. If we are going to go with trail, or if we are going to move forward with trail signs in the next couple of years, I think that although cedar signs are beautiful, they're
It's just
not
maintenance.
really that informative usually. And same kind of thing, when I was in Squamish, I went up the Sea to Sky, and they have a beautiful trail system at the top. And they've got small, just aluminum signs, very simple, probably very cost-effective to get. And they tell you, you know, this is a 2-kilometer loop, medium difficulty.
Yep.
They tell you about the berries along the side of the trail. Like, they're just really informative. I think that's what we need on our in our trail systems, not kind of the like bigger, more beautiful signs sometimes.
That's something I haven't done my homework a lot on, and I do want to get the best bang for our buck for all our trails.
Yeah, for sure. Gyro center retaining wall with seats and path.
Okay, that's to deal with our new basketball court. There's grass there now, but it gets muddy. And plus the kids are there so much, it'd be nice for the flower bed that's there. The retaining wall is actually falling down. So it'd be nice to remove that. And my proposal is to grab call them Lego blocks. They're actually a topper that go on there, and they're about 2 feet high, and they have like a seat looking in there. So proposing cost effective wise is to use those as the seats and a retaining wall also at the same time, and then pour a nice slab down on the ground, and that would kind of alleviate everything. And then we put a nice stairway down there that would go from the upper parking lot down there, and which leads actually to the gyro lacrosse box that we also, the pickleballers use a lot too. So it'd be a couple good things for us is for basketball and for the pickleball or the lacrosse people for safely getting down to that next section.
Okay. Councillor Solda?
It's not a question regarding this, but it is a question to do with parks, and it's not on the list. But in a lot of parks, we're upgrading some of our parks, and like swings and that. I'm looking at wheelchair accessibility, right? With the swings, and a lot of communities have that where a wheelchair can go on and do their thing. So, yeah.
That they're called inclusive parks.
Thank
and
you.
we do have the proposal in the Williamson Park one. That's
Okay.
part of the one of them. It's called
I just wanted
inclusive.
to bring that up. Thank
And
you.
also, when you asked, there is we did get the grant, in the inclusive one is actually have a canvas roof over top of it that would
Nice.
do the shading or the protecting of the children and the adults, and also going towards the caretaker's home would be another shelter that would be via sort of the one at the Canal Beach as well. So I know your question was there, and I was kind of holding back and biting my tongue, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to Parks and Recreation and Facilities. We've done all the parks ones. Thank you very much for explaining all of those. Come on up, Mr. Cranevelt.
Hello.
Hello. So the first one we've got is Gyro Center security cameras.
Okay, so that's just, we've done a lot of work there over the last couple of years, and it's looking really great. Unfortunately, we've been getting hit quite a lot with graffiti and some other vandalism, so we'd just like to protect our investment. And it doesn't just cover gyro, it would also cover the basketball court, the lacrosse box, the tennis court, kind of the whole general area, not so much the playground, but the building and the surrounding amenities.
Okay. And Glenwood Center ride-on floor scrubber.
Might not exactly be the ride-on, it's just a placeholder. That unit is quite old now and we've put in a lot of money, it's still working, so I kind of just propose that we keep using it until it no longer functions, but it would be nice to have the money there. We might get 2 years more, 3 years, but it's the last round of repairs was probably half that amount of a new one, so it's time to be at least aware of it.
Question?
Yep.
So on the scrubber, so you're, how much is the scrubber worth then?
A new one,
Mm-hmm.
9,000.
So, but you still have life in it, right?
We still have life in it.
So
But
you,
we've just replaced the motor last year for a couple thousand and the batteries for 4,000 the year before that. So if any more of those costly repairs come, I wouldn't feel good.
so you're looking at maybe another year or two?
As
out of
long
it?
as we can get out of it.
So you could put like so much in a little kitty, and I know it's nickel and dime.
Kind of
but-
unofficially earthing it, but
Earthing it, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. We want to see it saved over
Yes.
30 years.
just thought I'd ask.
Okay, garbage can compound citywide.
So now that we got rid of our container truck, so now we have issues with our garbage cans. So I know we're all bear aware and all that, so it'd be nice to, like at the multiplex on game night, there's up to 24 garbage cans that are being used on the night. Normally we have 8 to 12 there. So it'd be nice to have a lockable system where the crew doesn't always have to pull them inside and outside the building. And all our facilities are like that. So it'd be nice to have a compound that's lockable and a 6-foot fence. And a lot of them, it's going to be easy to do because we just put them right where the garbage cans were, the big containers. So yeah, it's just to protect our assets, and because there's quite a few of them that have been spewed out throughout the town already, so.
And alarm panels at heritage facilities.
So mainly McLean's Mill and the IHS building and the Roundhouse have really old architecture, probably original to when alarm systems first came out. Some of the areas I won't name, but we can no longer secure them because the alarm system's not functioning properly in those areas. So all weekend alarms were going off randomly. Those areas really need, if we want to protect them.
Councillor Solberg?
So the alarm panels, are they monitored? How are we looking after that?
Yes, they are monitored, but some areas we've had to bypass them now because they won't arm.
So are they monitored by the city? How are they monitored?
They are monitored by a Secure Tech monitoring station.
So would not the monitor, so the company comes in and replaces it? Is that how it works?
The monitoring station would be separate from the actual security company that would handle the physical hardware. They only monitor the signal and call 911 or...
Okay.
Okay, Echo Field House furnace number 1.
So we have 3 furnaces that are original to 1991, and they're not high efficient, and we can't get parts anymore for the burners, so it was recommended we start replacing one a year.
Okay. One question to bring forward maybe at the next meeting. A few years ago we renovated, or no, we didn't renovate, we replaced the furniture and made Echo Field House look a little bit nicer. When that was brought to us on our options list, we were told that the intent would be to increase our rental revenue and increase our profit on that, basically. Do we have any information on whether, that was before you were Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage, but has that happened? Have we seen an increase in rental?
As far as the hourly rates, that's something that we're exploring currently as part of potential 5-year fees and charges bylaw. But I'm not aware of any increase in specific hourly rates at this stage.
Okay, thank you. Echo Field House parking lot resurface.
So another cost-saving measure, my suggestion would be to hold off on this $150,000 off the options list this year. We feel that there's an ability to not only get a year or more out of the surface, but also potential partnership, since that space is shared with the school district as well, since it backs onto to ADSS. So my suggestion would be to remove that 150,000, but I do want to bring a couple of urgent projects just to your attention as we're reviewing here. So it's 4 urgent projects that I'd like council to consider on the list. Just going back to parks, the Paper Mill Dam stairs, based on safety. The Penny Lane Bridge, also based on safety. The Russell Field light pole repairs, and then also the furnace number 1 at Echo Fieldhouse. So we're talking about order of priority. That would be staff's suggestion for the 4 most urgent projects.
What was that last one, sorry?
The Echo Fieldhouse furnace number 1, so just immediately above the parking lot resurface.
Thank you. Okay.
Also, just to bring to council's attention back into parks as well, an item that has just actually surfaced that's not part of the list. We've got a potential partnership with the Kinsmen for extending the fencing at the back of the multiplex where the fall fairgrounds. So the Kinsmen are keen to partner, so I'd like to see added to the options list if possible, $12,500 to extend the fencing. So that would be matching with the Kinsmen.
And we already did 1,000 feet last year, so they thought it worked over so well, they had so many compliments on it, they would like to finish the rest of the hillside. And that carries on right to where Alberni paving is pretty much.
Okay, thank you. Multiplex retaining wall.
So the multiplex, everybody sees it as 2 years ago we opened the project, right? So we're looking at our 19th year, and the one hillside between the multiplex and the athletic hall has never been completed, never finished, and never been done anything with it. So we're proposing to put up a nice retaining wall with a brand new set of stairs, because the wooden stairs that are there now are ready for remodel. They're starting to go. We've replaced a few stringers already. So we'd like to throw a nice set of concrete stairs in and new railings, and then the following year we'd like to put in a proposal to do all the landscaping around there. So this year we're asking to get the retaining wall built and backfilled and drainage in behind it, because right now it's eroding, sloughing, and it's always carrying the mud onto the existing surface that's there now. So.
Okay, and multiplex skate shop upgrades.
So in order of priority in the skate shop, to service or replace the current exhaust system, to replace shelving, increase storage, increase a more efficient workstation, and paint and flooring throughout. So just general upgrades.
And multiplex parks yard genie lift.
So currently we have a scissor lift that is being decommissioned. Number 1, safety and its age. So it'd be an IRF part of it. We would like to replace it though with a genie instead of another scissor lift. We'd like to replace it with the genie, which could be used actually citywide. Instead of just being the scissor lift there, we could actually use the genie for doing lighting. We could have our electricians on site doing instead of renting their system, and also around all the arena to paint it. There's so many facilities that we have in Port Alberni that we rent, or we'd like to rent if we could afford it, to do a genie lift, and like all our painting, our contractors could actually use it, stuff like that, or our staff, of course. But if there's we could actually include the genie lift instead of being always at prime time for rentals, and it would be at our use at any time, especially any emergencies or anything like that. Like we've been waiting for a lift to repair our radiation heatings at the multiplex, and we had to wait for a lift truck there for almost a week until we could get one. So right there we could have had our refrigeration people up there that day to do the repairs. So all it is just replacing something we have, but more versatile piece of equipment that could be used citywide instead of just multiplex that's hard surface only.
And did you say there's money in IRF for the scissor?
No, I say it was a replacement.
Okay.
It's I call it IRF, but it's just something that has to be replaced at a piece of equipment we already have.
Okay. Councillor Paulson.
The scissor lift, in one incarnation or another, has been an ongoing problem. I wonder if we'd have any idea over the last year or two or 3 or 4, what we spent on hiring one to come in. And, you know, anytime you have to do the lighting in the multiplex, you've got to bring a unit in now. You don't have a scissor lift. You had mentioned the heaters. I'm more familiar with the multiplex, but
Or any
just
program,
curious
Ron, that
about
we've
cost.
had there, like when we do drop the cords, we have to have one.
yeah,
Like for the wrestling or any grads or any weddings, we always have to re-renting it now, so.
just be interested to know what we've paid a contractor to.
That's something we could probably bring back to you.
Yeah.
Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is this something we're gonna need a trailer for, or do we have a trailer? we
No,
can-
it'd be small enough that we do have current trailers in our yard, yes.
So we
Yeah,
can
we'd
move
make
around
sure
with our own
it's,
stuff,
that you
okay.
can get a 90-footer that I used to use at the APD, but it'd be useless. So we'd get like to a 40, 45-footer. If it's been recommended like a 45, then we can get to the roof. And that's another thing too, is the compensation part of it. You can exit off there on top of the roof and it'd be safe for all our workers as well.
And the old one is non-certifiable, so it's
No,
going to
no,
the
it's-
Industrial Heritage
I
Society?
think it's already made it, to be honest with you. We wouldn't let anybody use it. It's getting that bad.
Well, I'm sure the CAO would like another piece of equipment to the Industrial Heritage Society.
It could probably go to the museum.
There we go. Councillor Solta.
I know genie lifts are really handy in the theater world. We've used them a lot. My question on the genie lift is, could you, when you rent it, like grad comes in or any society that or event comes in, could you rent that? You want to use our genie lift?
Yeah, it would be part
You
of
would
the
charge it.
package. We'd be doing a rental charge on it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that'd be a cost-effective way to go.
Yes.
Multiplex parking lot repaving.
So on this one, I recommend that if we're going to do the wall, that would be something that would be done after the wall, because it's a lot of that is all the seal that's on for the parking lot. So it'd be parts of it that's never actually been paved. It's all been it's all seal coat. So that'd be to finish off the multiplex for the paving part of it, and it's mostly on the east side.
Thank you.
And gas tax on.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're on the last page. Johnson Road planter box installation.
So we've been doing beautiful work on, and we get, like our gardeners and our workers have been doing unreal in our planter boxes, doing beautiful displays. We're getting phone calls from everywhere, eh, Mr. Deacon? Yeah. And we'd like to do another block worth, probably by the school or, you know, downstream, wherever you guys prefer, which way we go with the planters. We do have irrigation that's already set up for the current ones that we'd like to have done this year, but the biggest thing is we'd like to do another block worth of planter boxes, because the trees, they're getting to be, you know, invasive and they're getting old. So it'd be nice to start getting the planter boxes, which we've been having so many compliments on all year round. So, and the guys do a wonderful job at Christmas with the lighting, and they do their fall bulbs and all that. So it's they're versatile, and they could be moved if an event comes up or you guys want to change the location of them.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Solta.
So Johnson, I've heard a lot of great things about the flowers, and they look great, and I have no problem with that. My question is, what about other areas of this community? Because you hear, you know, you're putting
Yeah,
everything
we
over
have
here.
another set on Gertrude that'll be going in this year that's in stock now. They come in late for the season. So we are planting them on by the plaza across the street from Port Poshwash,
Okay.
right along that plaza there. We do have that system going in there as well. Yes, we will be offspring in other areas as well.
As time goes on.
As time goes on, and we like to do a block or two at a time and get the whole valley going as beautification. I think beautification sells myself. And we got 1 million people driving by Johnson Road to start with. I mean, it'd be great to make this valley look great. I'm proud of where I live, and I want to make it nicer than it was when I started.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely.
Aquatic Center accessibility lift.
So we currently have 3 accessibility lifts, and they're important because our current aquatic center doesn't have any zero depth entry points. So we do have the ramp in the shallow end, but the deep tank and the wading pool, as well as there's each of the 4 family change rooms has a track to assist patrons onto gurneys. 2 of our accessibility lifts are from 2000 and 2005 respectively, and they only have a 5 to 8 year lifespan. They are safe because we have them inspected annually, as well as the tracks, but we can no longer get parts and they're way past end of life, so it's pretty important that we have those. So I'll be asking for another one next year.
Thanks for the warning.
I like the budget part.
RCMP building temporary exhibit lockers.
Inspector Hunter may want to comment, but it was communicated by Galen that the way they store evidence is they need more capacity and the layout isn't conducive. So that's more of a placeholder till they actually bring forth the plan for me to properly cost it out.
Okay. And RCMP building GIS flooring.
Again, they're reconfiguring the layout in there with new desks and moving furniture around, and the flooring is in poor shape, so it makes sense to replace that at the same time.
Okay. And a tree planting program.
So that's me again. So this is going to be, we're going for regreening. It's a program grant through BC Hydro, and I would love to replace a lot of the old aging trees along 3rd Avenue, so lower 3rd Avenue. It's approximately 15 trees, and there's 2 up in the south end of by the old Pine Cafe and Colson's building. There's 2 there that have to be replaced as well. So they only pay for the trees. So we'd have to go in for the labor, and each tree is about $600 to $800 to replace. So if they pay for the trees, I figure that the $10,000 will cover for the replacement of those trees, and they'd be more cost effective. They'd be a smaller growth and a smaller canopy, so we wouldn't have a lot of leaves to carry. It'd be more of a condensed area, and stay greener all year round instead of just the beautiful 3 weeks of foliage there.
Councillor Soltai.
I know this is to somebody's heart here who loves the trees and that.
Do you love trees?
Yes, but I have a question. Didn't we replace those trees?
That was on
How long
the
ago?
east side. Now I'm planning on the west side.
Okay, so my other concern is, and I have mentioned this to the mayor, and she had an answer for that too, but
I have answers for everything.
yes, replacement of the trees, the roots were digging up the sidewalks. And that's why we took out some of our trees. We had these nice blossoming trees, and of course, all the blossoms went in, it made a mess, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have an answer for
Yeah,
that?
our gardeners have done their studies, and we would sucker truck the stumps that are there, and we'd cut around the stumps that are there, and the roots that are there will die off. And then the root ball that'll be installed with the new trees will be a lot less, there'll be no heaving, so it's more of a ball than a spread and a raise. So they've done all their homework on that as well, so.
So no drainage problems or anything, like
No,
none
no.
of the roots?
And the proper soils, that would be like a soil with some pea gravel in it. It'll also let it aerate and all that too. So, yeah, so we won't have any heaving. So the trees have been studied so that you won't have the major issues we have currently.
So watering them or anything?
We'd have to do that for the first 2 years, yes.
We don't have a system for that?
No. But there is bags out there right now that we plan on purchasing with the trees.
Okay.
They're a tree bag where you just come along with the water truck, fill them up, and they irrigate them for XYZ. That'd be all of a test of how much the tree needs, so, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Poon.
So that's, and then there's other areas too. We're going to start trying the Arizona plants as well, where they don't require any watering or low watering as well. And we're planning on that on the side of the Gertrude that I was talking about. We're planning on maybe trying some of those trees there and see how it looks, and we'll see what kind of response we have for the first year or so.
I can promise I'm going to make sure trees and a tree strategy are a larger discussion for council over
Thank
the
you.
next few months. A
Thank
much
you.
larger discussion. Councillor Poon.
When these trees are replaced, Are the old ones discarded, or are they planted elsewhere in the city?
No, they're pretty well beyond. Yeah, they're discarded and chipped up and actually were used in our trails and all that for the ground. So we recycle it.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay. Fireworks show at Salmon Festival 2019. Nobody wants to speak to it.
Oh, Mr. Deacon.
Mr. Deacon.
This is another orphan, and so we've picked it up. Quality Foods, who does the fireworks around Vancouver Island, really from Victoria to Campbell River, and then here as well, came to us last year and asked us to put $10,000 into the fireworks for Salmon Fest, and we hesitated, and they long enough that they made a commitment to go ahead with it, so they felt compelled to do so, but they did tell us that we are the only city of all of the ones that they're doing the fireworks in that isn't contributing to the fireworks, so they've asked us to put $10,000 into the budget on a reoccurring basis.
Councillor Solda.
So maybe there is some new development that's happening that would be interested in partnering with Quality Foods instead of the city doing that. I mean, there's organizations that could put money into the fireworks. I just think $10,000, we could do so much more with that. Christmas lights, do whatever to make the city happen, and that's what people are asking for. Fireworks are beautiful, yeah, I agree, but I think we can partner somewhere.
Councillor Paulson.
Just a quick question. Willa? Would this be, and I know they've missed the intake this year, but would this be something that could be considered at the community investment program? Maybe.
Absolutely, if that's council's wish to direct them to CIP, yes.
I would say that our current budget for CIP wouldn't give anywhere near the amount that we would need, that they would be asking for. CAO?
Madam Mayor, you partially covered my comment. This came to us late in the season, just before the event, and I asked Mr. Deacon not to commit to it pending council's consideration of it. Luckily, Quality Foods was a good corporate sponsor, and they carried the full price last year. Great show, if for anybody who saw it. We see it as very much a CIP function, and we would suggest that if council wants to support this on an ongoing, recurring basis, you'll notice a little R next to it. That means recurring expenditure. That we propose that the CIP budget would be increased by $10,000, and council would predetermine that that was an item that would be approved to that amount. So it wouldn't impact other CIP recipients.
Councillor Paulson.
CIP, and I like improving the budget there because I've sat on that board, and Councillor Poon will know what we're up against. But also another potential partner could be Community Forest. They're looking at some sort of high-profile investment in the community as well. So just a thought.
Also, Steelhead LNG was here today talking about looking for ways to invest in the community. I would say, and I mean, maybe we could add to our options list community investment program additional budget. I think we should possibly consider that anyways, given the interest that we have in the community investment program, and it's a great way to leverage our funds to see further benefit into the community. I would like to see us possibly send this to the regional district. And I know you did say that we're the only city, but I think sometimes we need to look at things that are of regional benefit and ask the regional district to consider funding them rather than the city. We can't fund everything. I also would question, do the fireworks need to be at Salmon Fest? Or, I mean, a lot of people on Canada Day this year were complaining there were no fireworks. So is Salmon Fest, I know Salmon Fest is our thing in Port Alberni, but is that the, biggest event in Port Alberni, or should we be considering other celebrations? Sorry, Councillor Washington. He's going home.
We haven't had a discussion with the organizers of Salmon Fest about this, and we haven't considered other events simply because the fireworks, there's been a set of fireworks at the sail pass as well, but this has been the big set of fireworks for at least a decade, maybe more.
Or, I would suggest we do send a request to the regional district to partner on this, and it doesn't mean we can't still consider it, but I think we should at least be reaching out and asking the regional district. Councillor Solda?
And I think, like you mentioned earlier, too, the LNG project said they were interested in community events, and I think that would be a great partnership. Maybe the Sands Group or any other new industry that has come in. And it might not be for the full 10,000, it might be 5,000. Let's do a partnership with them and let's send a letter there. I think it would be great.
Okay, with that said, we are through the options list. Are there additional projects that council would like to see added to the options list? Councillor Paulson.
I don't know if it's for now, but we have discussed this. And Harbor Quay needs a facelift.
That was my idea.
Whether it be, well, we should be talking then. But it's been many, many years, the pale green. I see pictures of, in the Bahamas and stuff, of waterfront buildings that are much brighter. The thing that I've always noticed about the Harbor Quay is there's never been, and it's difficult if you're standing across the parking lot, a delineation between the shops. It's a one green wall, and it could all be one business, or it could be 20 businesses. But I just throw it out there. I think it's past due for a facelift, even if it's just paint, and just throw it out there.
Okay, I agree. Councillor Haggard.
I had a conversation with Dan Savard, owner of Swept-Away Inn, last week, and he said he gets people from all over the world to go to his accommodations. They look out that way over the water, the most beautiful view that they've ever seen. They look over this way and they go, "Can't you guys afford a can of paint?" And I think it's an embarrassment now. It's been so long. It's not only one color of green, it's like 3 or 4 different colors of green. Now, I think it must be patched up somehow and faded, but every year Harbor Quay gets busier and busier with locals and tourists, and the city needs to do a better job of protecting our assets, taking care of our assets. So it definitely needs a paint job. It needs a good deep cleaning, pressure wash the sidewalks, clean the ceilings. So yes, I agree with Mr. Paulson. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
That's fine. Mr. Deacon, do you have a comment on that?
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's great that the arrival of the cruise ships are increasing our awareness about what needs to be done at Harbor Quay and in other parts of the community. Tomorrow, 2 people from Aquila arrive in the community, and then on Thursday or Wednesday and Thursday we have a day and a half of them doing a workshop with us for the becoming aware of what we need to do in order to truly do a wonderful job of hosting. And I know we are a great host community already, and that we do a good job of that. And Aquila has been responsible, and the cruise lines have said that Aquila has been responsible for increasing the cruise ship traffic in many ports in eastern Canada and in the Caribbean. One of the things that we've asked them to do in advance of the workshop is go and take a look at Harbor Key and at Esso Beach, and in fact that whole area around Harbor Key and Lower Argyle, and let us know what, in their opinion, are things that we really need to pay attention to catch the eye. As my colleague Dave McCormick has said, that like the 2010 Olympics that inspired so much of the way of investment in facilities, the cruise ships are representing that opportunity for us, and we're doing it with an eye to beyond 2019 and beyond cruise ships.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Councillor Corbeil?
I would just like to at least float the idea, and I mentioned this earlier today at the Advisory Traffic Committee. The Alberni, Cycle Alberni group talked about a number of issues they had. And one thing that we talked about was the Victoria Quay Road and how that's likely going to change with the addition of the new sawmill. So this could be something that we do in phases, but I think we should start planning on some sort of bike pedestrian pathway that would start over in the Clutha Marina area and head south. And just a little sidebar, I was up in Tofino on the weekend, and you know, that pathway is used a heck of a lot, and they're actually building one that's going to connect Ucluelet and Tofino, which is a real major undertaking. So might be something that we want to at least start planning for. Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, any other projects council wants to consider adding? Okay. With that, I think we will move on to input and question from the public. Are there any public questions at this point? No questions. We do have a letter dated January 24th, 2019, requesting council carefully review the city's financial policies, review past budgets and actuals, and make informed decisions, and ask a lot of questions from Leslie Wallerius. Thank you very much, Leslie, for the letter. It does bring up a question for me. We have talked a lot about actuals during budget time over the last 4 years, and we haven't gotten to a point where we have actuals available. A lot of other local governments do budget and review the actuals from the prior year, as well as the budgeted numbers from the prior year. I know we may not be at a point this year where we're able to do that, because we're just talking about it now, and given we had, you know, a lot of turnover in our finance department last year and challenges. But I believe really strongly that we cannot properly budget without looking at what was spent the year before. So I don't know how we get there for next year. That's for you guys to find out. But from my perspective, that's an incredibly important part of this process that we've been overlooking. So just comment on that. Would somebody like to move receipt of the letter?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Carried. And council review, any further input to give? I'm assuming not. Our next meeting, or budget meeting, is February 4th, 2019 at 1 p.m. Would somebody like to move adjournment? So moved. Second. All in favor? Carried.